What's up, guys? This episode with Rocco Vargas was originally posted in October for a few hours, but YouTube age restricted the episode, so that meant none of you were ever going to see it, so we had to take it down, and I have now personally gone in and bleeped out every single problematic word or potentially problematic word in here to ensure that not only we are following all of YouTube's community guidelines, but we are following all of the full monetization and non-age restriction guidelines as well, because this is an extremely informative episode with someone who has been working in and around the border, including on the special forces of the actual Border Patrol for many, many years, and is documenting it now and doing an amazing show on YouTube all about it. That link is in the description. So thank you guys for your understanding, and please enjoy. Rocco, thank you so much for being here, man. You are one of the most requested guests we've ever had.
I hope I don't disappoint.
I think you're going to live up, man. You have had a hell of a career doing a lot of different things. We were just talking about the fact that you have 8 kids along the way. That's also impressive given everything you've done. But, you know, probably the topic of the hour is what you've been doing your Borderlands podcast and book from 2023 on, which is the U.S. border, which you were in the Border Patrol for, I guess, like 6 years,
Yep.
and you still maintain ties with
Yep.
what's going on there and everything. But before we get into it, I just want to say your book gives the best view into the Border Patrol and what it's actually all about that I've ever seen. Because, I mean, you know how it is in society. We all just have this idea of someone standing there with a gun on the border waiting for someone to cross. But it's actually like you got special forces on the border. You got all kinds of ranges of skills that are difficult to train, to the point that even a guy who was an Army Ranger like you came into the Border Patrol and it was like difficult to get in there and do your thing. But, you know, what got you interested in doing that job in the first place, man?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I grew up in L.A., driving to Mexico, and with my family doing the whole we go to this 50-mile bike ride from Rosarito to Ensenada, and I'd see these Border Patrol agents in there. At the time, was like a mint green truck. I had no idea who the hell they were. And so I asked questions about it before, saw a movie called, I think it's called, it was called Born in East L.A., and it was a Cheech Marin film, and it talked about him crossing the border. He was trying to get across the border to get to some event, but it had a lot of like talk about illegal immigration in the film, but it was used in a comedic tone. So I had no idea it was like anything serious until the military. I was during one of my deployments, one of my squad leaders, Sergeant Barraza, was kind of asking us all, like, what do we want to do after? You know, and everyone has this thoughts. You know, you're overseas at the time when we were in Afghanistan, and we're cleaning our weapons, and everyone says, you know, cop, firefighter, this or that. Me too, the same. My father was a firefighter, so I was like, probably a firefighter, maybe even a smoke jumper. Now that I'm an airborne ranger, I can just do both, you know? And he said Border Patrol. And I was like, Sergeant, you're Mexican, bro. Like, I don't know if you know this, but you're Mexican. Why would you want to be a Border Patrol agent, you know? I had no idea what I was even talking about, but he mentioned how they have a really good budget for the special operations side of things, and his dream was to become a BORTAC member, which is Border Patrol Tactical Team. And so when he kind of put me onto that, I started looking into it more, and it actually seemed pretty interesting. And at the time when you Google it, there was BORTAC, and then there was this group called SOG, which Special Operations Group was the top of the line. These were the kind of, they can get response anywhere around the world for any kind of crisis. Yeah. And so I had my eyes on that for a second. I was like, that sounds interesting, but we'll see. But that was the first time I ever kind of thought, like, maybe I can transition from what I'm doing as an Army Ranger overseas. And when you're overseas, you realize that we actually are kind of helping defeat some of the potential future attacks on America when you start collecting the information, the intel on these guys that we're apprehending overseas, or, you know, these killer capture missions we're doing. You start to see their ties to America and their plans of kind of hurting Americans. Yeah. And so then you really are like, man, how could I do this in my own country? Well, Border Patrol was the answer for that for me.
Well, I think something that really lays out well in your book that's such a breath of fresh air for this conversation is the fact that you try to get down to the nuts and bolts of it. You know, the politics and this stuff obviously gets crazy, and I understand that. You know, people are going to fight over something like the security of our border. But to your point, it's like, it's not just this whole U.S. is bordered with Mexico or U.S. is bordered with Canada on the north side. It's like the threat that can be for bad actors to come across who aren't from those places, even to say nothing of some of the bad actors who may exist in those places as well. It's like, you know, you hear people say, if you don't have a border, you do, like, what's a country? And I kind of get that.
Yeah, that's exactly, like, in the book, I was trying to explain that this conversation, which became political during the Trump era.
Yes.
It wasn't political before then for some reason, as much as you would think. It wasn't. It wasn't like this big conversation because of the way, I believe the way it was handled by the Obama administration was, it was almost a Passover. People were just like, oh yeah, he's dealing with it, whatever. But the Trump administration, and I wouldn't say them per se, I would say maybe more the media turned it into a political argument. Yeah. And when it got pulled into political argument, people felt they needed to choose sides. Well, the only two sides you can choose in this conversation is border security or immigration policy. Those are the two sides that people picked. So to make that even easier, was build the wall or open the border, right? That was the conversation. And that's all the conversation ended up being. And it continues to be that for those who really don't understand the topic. They just say, well, let's just jump on one of these sides and that's going to say, build the wall, f everybody. You know, and the other side goes like, let them all in. And that's where this conversation became like, man, you guys really don't get it. It's so complex and there's so much more to this conversation. And the answer is actually more in the middle of that. It's kind of like both of those combined. And I expand.
I can't believe
that. It's become this emotional conversation. Yes. And when people get their emotions involved, they stop really wanting to educate themselves on the subject more. And because they would find that they're probably wrong. You know what I mean? It's not the extreme versions of those is what we'd want to say. It bothered me because here's my biggest gripe. Why I wrote the book, let me say this. I'm sitting in Hollywood doing Mayans MC, and it's a very privileged life to live like that, okay? Okay, like at one point during the best contract I ever had, I received my check, and I was emotional because I felt really that I made this much money in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, that matched my Border Patrol paycheck. You know what I mean? That kind of feeling. And then watching the scrutiny that the media was giving them, right? The media was saying, oh, they're just like the Nazis, the way they're treating these kids in cages and things like that. Like all that conversation, when it gets to Hollywood, it's just multiplied 10 times. Sure. Because then the Hollywood people, some of these individuals who jump on these conversations because they want to back them. But the lack of information on that, right? And so they jump on and be like, hey man, fuck these border trades, dude. You see what they're doing? And I'm sitting there like, motherfucker, I am them. Right. I was them. I know what they're doing. And so I got pretty frustrated and decided I was going to write a book. The Border Patrol at the time took a position like, well, let's just not counter any of these arguments because let's just like out of sight, out of mind, forget it. But it didn't benefit the agent boots on ground, the dudes who are working the job. So I'll say it this way. The first 4 years of the Trump administration, as much as it was good for Border Patrol based on the policies that were implemented by that administration, the public eye towards the Border Patrol was negative. The media's interpretation of the Border Patrol's job was negative. And so as the Border Patrol is doing good by doing whatever policy was put into place, meaning most likely it's going to be any kind of illegal immigration that comes across that they apprehend, they're just going to end up, expedited removal, right? Just deporting them. As much as that felt good and it's doing the job exactly that what you signed up for and you feel like you're doing your job, well, the public persona of the Border Patrol was negative. Yes. They saw them as these guys who were being abusive. They thought they were racist. All the conversation from the whole thing with the kids in cages, which was completely taken out of context.
Yeah, I want to come back to that.
Yeah, we will.
Go ahead.
But like multiple different things, just the fact that Trump, that they said Trump said this or Trump said that, I'm not going to put any weight behind any of it, but it pulled the idea that the Border Patrol was a conservative-leaning organization. And that's unfair because the organization alone has no political bias. It can't. It's a government organization. It's a law enforcement, and so the average person sitting on the back end believed it. And then you started hearing some truth, like, yeah, but they're like 60, 70% Hispanic. They're like, what? Why would they do that? Well, what do you mean, why would they do that? It's a great job. It's a good career, right? So this thing where, like, so those 4 years, the public was all over the agency. And that's not easy as an agent. You know, they were dealing with their own family members saying, how can you treat kids like that? How can you treat people like that? And which is false. It's an exaggerated narrative. There is some truth to these kids in cages, but like I said, we'll circle back on what that looks like. So when you're going around your own city and people talk, right? And when you're going around your social media and people talk, and when you're going around your family even doesn't understand it because they believe everything the media says, it doesn't feel good inside of that. Like, man, am I doing the right thing? And that led to the Border Patrol having one of the highest suicide rates out of any law enforcement agency at the time. And then you get these next 4 years, the Biden administration. Now, the policies that are put in place are not the most beneficial for the Border Patrol feeling as if they are doing their job that they originally signed up for.
How so?
Because now, instead of deporting anyone who comes over illegally, the policies that are put in place are allowing them to seek asylum and get an NTA, right? A notice to appear. We'll dig into that later, more what that looks like. And so for the agency, now not speaking as the organization, everything is just my own opinion and watch what I've observed in my experience. Got it? Just a little CYA there, covering my ass right there.
We've had to do that a few times in the studio.
Put a little writing on the wall here, like, hey, all my opinion. Either way, the agents feel as if they're handcuffed and not able to do their job, right? Because of the policies that are put into place. Are they doing the job? They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. These migrants are coming across, and they're still apprehending them. They're still stopping them. They're still getting all the biographical information, right? Like all the data, right? And then they're still processing an A file, right? Just giving them a documentation. But after that, the process has changed where now there is no facility or location or anything put into place where we can house this many illegal immigrants. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, because the flow has turned up like crazy.
Like crazy. It's slowed down recently, but sometimes there's a political kind of slowdown or whatever the case.
You don't say.
Yeah, it's weird how it works.
Yeah.
But the fact is that we don't have anything put in place where we can house this many individuals while we wait for their determination of their case, right? An immigration judge determines, okay, you say you're seeking asylum, let's look into it. They determine yes or no, right? So we don't have a system put in place to house them.
What's one money lesson you wish you had learned earlier? For me, it's easy. I never thought about how much a little bit of money could go if I saved it on a consistent basis. And let me explain what I mean by that with the help of today's sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to automatically start saving and investing for your future. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits with you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. You guys have heard me talk about it on the podcast in the past, but back in early 2020, when I was at a crossroads of my career, one thing I've never mentioned is that is when I opened up an Acorns account with just investing my spare change. My thought was, well, I really don't have any money. I don't know what I'm going to be funding in the future as far as what I was going to decide to end up doing, but I know I would want something to at least grow so that I could put it to work in the future. And it turns out that little account did grow enough that I was able to use it earlier this year to get some equipment for the very podcast you're watching right now. Pretty cool stuff. So if you want to join me in investing your spare change or just a little bit every day automatically, head over to acorns.com/Julian or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Once again, that's acorns.com/Julian, and the link is in the description below.
This is a paid client testimonial. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC is an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/Julian.
So all we can do is find a sponsored family that they connect to, whether someone they know or the cartel's giving them an address that just use this one, right? And whatever.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about the cartels today,
right,
too.
And so then they get let into the country for a notice to appear, a later date in which they can come back and the immigration judge can make a determination of their case. So that doesn't feel good for the agents to know, like, man, it's almost like a catch and release. And the problem of that is now the media, instead of now calling them bad names, they're saying, they're not even doing their job. The media is using the spin.
Can't win.
Right. So for the past 8 years, they're the scapegoat for whatever conversation the media wants to use them for. And that's unfair.
Yeah, and you know what? You made the point in there 5 minutes ago about how like 60-70%, I believe you said,
Yes.
of the Border Patrol is often like
Hispanic.
Hispanic. And when I'm just sitting at home in my armchair here thinking about the stereotype that is pictured, it's a white dude in a cowboy hat spitting out some chew like get on the other side of the border there. And that's not
it's
not what it is.
No.
And now these guys are it's like they're doing their job, but they're not being helped on the back end. So they're taking all the blame for it. Like you said, it's like burning on both ends of the candle.
Yeah, it's tough because the Border Patrol is doing exactly the job that is put in place for them currently right now. They're following the policies and procedures that are put into place. So they're doing their job. But mainstream public eye, it looks as if they're assisting, aiding and abetting.
That's right.
And it's false. That's a false narrative. That's just what the media uses to make them look bad. That's what the media uses to kind of pull people in different directions for voting. That's what it is. Okay. Yes. And so remember, this isn't a left and right conversation, but it's been used that way. And the Border Patrol has been the butt of that joke for way too goddamn long. And I'm frustrated. And that's why I wrote the book. And that's why I continue to do what I do with Borderland is let's give people the information they deserve so hopefully they can make a better determination of what's really happening on our borders.
Absolutely. I think something that would help out there just for all the people listening who are casual viewers of what happens on the border. I mean, they're not experts on it, but it's something they hear about in the news a lot. Maybe they've seen it in the political conversations, which isn't exactly helping. But like when you talk about Border Patrol versus ICE and the process that's supposed to happen, maybe not what's happening right now, maybe even different than the Trump years or whatever, but before that, like
perfectly.
Like border into ICE, where does the line get drawn where one goes to the other, and what are the roles, and how is it done when someone goes to come across the border?
Yeah, and if anyone watching this podcast wants to really dig into the nitty-gritty of it, the book really explains this, and this is why we had to write a book like that, because like too many people will blame all of it on the Border Patrol when there's so many layers. So let's talk about the first three, the only ones you really need to identify when you're talking borders. You got CBP, right? CBP, those are CBP Customs is who works the ports of entry. They're wearing blue. That's their color is a blue. They sit there in their chair or they're standing and they evaluate if you're an American citizen when you're coming back across, or they look at your documents. Okay. They work at ports of entry. Now, when you're entering into this country, the only way you're allowed to enter this country legally is through a port of entry. Anywhere outside of that port of entry is illegal. Okay. So they work all ports of entry. So if you've ever gone down to Tijuana, you're going to see them. They're the ones right there at the checkpoints, all the other border, all the way across the nation. That's Customs and Border Protection. That's Customs. So remember that. Border Patrol is the green uniforms, all right? Predominantly green. Now, if you're dealing with special operations, they're usually probably going to wear a different. It could be a multicam. It could be I think right now they're all running multicams, but when I was in, it was multicam and then a green kind of subdued uniform. But the Border Patrol themselves work everywhere outside of the port of entry. So they guard the nation across the borders outside of the port of entry. So anywhere that someone would enter outside of there trying to evade, abscond that detection is where the Border Patrol covers.
Where there's a hole in the wall.
Yes, where there's holes in the wall, potentially. After detection, after the Border Patrol themselves has apprehended these individuals and they've done their A-files on them and they've determined, like, okay, we're going to send them off to wherever for the immigration judge or deportation, they get handed off to ICE. ICE, at that time, ERO, right? They're the ones who now will set up deportation. Okay? Now, there's a change here sometimes that happens because the deportation is them and the housing is them, is ICE. But currently, because of the massive influx, sometimes it doesn't even get to them because they can't house them. And so they just hand off the Border Patrol, like, you guys go ahead and release them because we don't have anyone. So they give them their notice to appear and release them. As per policy, not just like...
I understand.
Yeah. And so that's the layers you have to think about. ICE also will be in major cities, and they work off of, if someone gets arrested and they find out that, it's a DUI and it's kind of a manslaughter case, whatever, and they're illegal immigrant, well, boom, they'll go to deportation hearing as well. Things like that. So if you get arrested for whatever reasons, boom, now ICE can identify they're illegal, boom, now they get set up for deportation.
And they also have the difficulty that the legal system is so far behind with this that like not for one of those examples, but even for like a standard, all right, someone just came here, regular person, not criminal, just cross the border illegally, sometimes their court date can be like 5 years from now.
Yeah. So back when I was, in, there was these policies that were put in place. Like I said, this is Obama era. Obama era was like he deported everybody.
Deporter
man.
in chief, baby.
That's it. That dude deported, and it wasn't a bad thing. Like he never got the scrutiny that Trump did because maybe his political presence and how he talked about the conversation and what you know what I mean. Like,
yeah, he didn't come out and say they're and some, I assume, are good people.
That is proven now to be a problem.
Yes.
Right? Like as a commander in chief, we have to have a little bit more tact than that.
Yes, we do.
And
I
so
agree.
when Obama was doing this, it wasn't public issue, right? It wasn't. They didn't put scrutiny on the Border Patrol for deporting as many as we did. And the way it worked was, if they come across, it was an expedited removal. Like, hey, you're in here illegally. Can you claim asylum? Well, let's see. And like, if someone from Mexico at the time tried to claim asylum, like, no, there's nothing that determines that you have any right to claim asylum. They say the cartel, like. That's not at that time. It's not considered to be a valid excuse.
Everyone could say that,
right?
Technically.
Exactly. And so at the time, it was still El Salvador. They were struggling a lot. They could claim asylum, and I don't remember at the time if there was another one, but you didn't have a lot of people who could claim asylum. So everyone else was just getting deported, and that expedited removal could be within 72 hours after we've already handed them off to ICE.
Did you see during your years, 09, 15, when you were active?
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of people coming from non-South American countries?
Not a lot. No, it was, we call them OTMs other than Mexicans, but everyone else south of the border who's not Mexican was labeled as an OTM as per paperwork. Okay. And so that's Guatemalans, El Salvadorians, Hondurans, freaking Chileans.
Yes.
Like the list goes on and
on.
All
right, let's come back to that.
Yeah.
Then.
It's funny, coincidentally, when I worked in the prison system, part of the prison became a holding facility for illegal immigration.
Where were you?
I was in CCA, which is a private prison owned right in Florence, Arizona.
Okay.
And so we were.
You were on the private prison side.
Bro, they paid good and they hired fast. Now that I know, it's funny. I got out of the military. I was like, $21 an hour? Yeah, I'm good. I'll do it. What do I do? And like the academy for that was seriously PowerPoint. So I was like, I'm gonna go work in a prison through a PowerPoint training. Like, God. And so
there are a lot of future podcasts on other topics with you. I just want to point that out,
dude. The private prison, that's a whole different world, homie. But working there, I'm like, damn, we got a lot of Hispanics in here. They're like, no, they call themselves, right? And that's kind of how they identify in prison. Is if I'm correct, it's like a Mexican nationals, but pretty much anyone who labeled it was an illegal immigrant at the time and they spoke Spanish, they fell into the gang, the prison culture of us.
Got it.
And so when you have in prison, you have Sureños, you have, some of the black gangs, you have at that time in Arizona, you have some of the Indian gangs, which would be, or the native gangs, which would be kind of like Warrior Nation, I believe it was, a couple others. They housed up with each other as does. That's how they label themselves. So they're not really a gang, right? They're not at all, but in the holding facilities, they had to kind of buddy up to protect each other. They're small but mighty. There's a lot of numbers, Yes. And so, yeah, dude, and they'd pop off too, dude. If someone took their food, they would fight too, and they'd bring 10 of them with them. So it was interesting. And I started like, why do we have so many illegal immigrants here? What's up? It's like, oh, they're just waiting for ICE deportation. So they were fighting their case. They were appealing their deportation. And if they lost, boom, they got deported either way. And that was the first time I ever heard of that in my life because, like I said, I was so far removed from the idea of what the border was, whole border patrol, the whole concept. And then when I became an agent, I was like, oh, the people from Arizona who are grabbing these dudes, ICE is putting them there to hold them because they have no other room for them, and then they're waiting for their deportation hearing. And once they get deported, boom, they get on their flight.
All right, so it's usually a flight when they do that.
Yeah, most of these people were flights. Because
a lot of us just like picture a bus going right to the other side, like get out.
Arizona does that.
They do that too.
Arizona does.
So that's true. Wow.
I'm in Texas, and from what I know is most of the time from the Texas areas, if they're getting deported back to Mexico, then they'll just drive a bus and drop them off right at the border.
Right on the border.
Right. But to someone, like connecting with the
a cartel coyote?
Probably. Now that I know more about it, right? But just hand him
Looks like
off.
a real straight shooter.
Right. That's the guy. He said he's wearing a blue tie. I don't know. But yeah, so they do drop off some of the border, the Mexican ones. But the funny thing is when you're interviewing them, you're like, so what country from? And they're like, Mexico. And you're like, this dude don't look Mexican at all.
Yeah.
So they're trying to hide the fact that they're from another country, right? Because the fact we're going to deport them directly to the country. And if the country is Chile, then they're going way down south. So point is, a lot of them try and hide the fact they're not Mexican so they can get deported to Mexico so they can make another attempt faster.
And you can't share ways that you guys detect that.
Well, not necessarily, but all dialect and language can help with that. So,
but there's other ways if they're good at that, though, right?
yeah,
that you guys have to make a determination.
some of these countries share their data, their criminal history. Some of them do, and that helps. Sometimes they're carrying their own identification arms, so right away we know. And then sometimes, like the way you say in Spanish, children is different. In Puerto Ricans and Mexicans, they have different dialects, right? And so some of us know that, and so you could identify right away, like, oh, this guy's from Honduras for sure.
Yeah.
So those are ways like that. But some of the really good Spanish speaking guys are the ones who take over that, and they try and break them. They try and ask them enough questions to really identify it, and eventually you get out of them.
So we have been talking about this like kids in cages narrative, and now that we at least understand the, I guess, like chain of custody there that it goes on, what was that? Because apparently Obama had set up holding facilities during his presidency that I think even Bush may have been a predecessor for on some of it. And then when Trump got in, the narrative became, oh my God, we're putting kids in cages, and Donald Trump did it. What's really the truth there?
So Obama actually closed down during his time a lot of the holding facilities because it was almost like no need for them at the time. It was like, why would we have these open? Let's just shut them down. The kids in cages was an interesting thing that the Trump administration tried to do to hopefully create deterrence, and it wasn't the kids in cages that was the deterrence. Like someone's going to clip them and be like, I told you. They created a policy that was trying to identify first if these kids were connected to the people that were crossing them. And so that takes a little bit longer to determine whether the DNA was or not, right? The other side of it is you have to, anytime we brought someone in who had kids, we had to determine if it was the father because of issues.
Oh, yeah.
And so we separated them already just for questioning. It's no different than what we did overseas when I went into a room in Iraq or something like that, and we had a bunch of dudes. We separated them, started asking questions, and started doing, our version of questioning to try and identify who's the dude we're looking for. It's no different there. You separate them. You put the kids over here, even with the mothers if you needed to. Sometimes you separate even from the mothers, but we have someone carrying. You try not to separate if their mother is identified, but right away is like, let's see if this is the father. If this isn't the father, let's do DNA testing right away. The problem with this was the Border Patrol facilities are not built to house more than like 35, 40 people at a time.
That's it?
Well, because it's a quick return. You come in. We don't get this massive influx. We just recently started getting this. So we're like, damn, what do you do with this?
I was going to say, there's 35, 40 just walked across while you said that.
Well, that's the problem. Is like the stations are not built to house that many people at once, and it started to become a problem. So they started creating like, well, what do you do now? It's becoming unsafe conditions. The only thing they do is make these makeshift kind of these pop-up housings, and all it was what you saw. Not cages. It was essentially just chain link fencing.
Yeah,
that's what it was. But you use the term cage. Well, now you the emotions. Now you the hearts and minds of the media, and so that's what they did. It was the fastest way they can actually create something so they can go through the process of determining where these kids are from, if these are the actual parents, and then what are they gonna do with them. Usually if it's coming as a family unit, then you keep the family unit together and you deport them. Now the process that Trump was trying to do, which was more, and what said Trump, the administration came down to like, hey, let's create deterrence. Let's separate them from the families and put the families in jail.
Yeah.
And that became an issue. And that's a issue for me too, because then what do you do with the kids? Well, then we have to house them. Well, do you get reconnected? I don't know. I don't know that far into it, but that's where it came. It was a chance of let's create deterrence, but optics wise, it looked terrible.
Yes,
it's terrible.
And and as a human being sitting at home, like I consider myself a winner of a lottery. The fact that I was born here, right? Like absolutely. It's such a great place to be. We have our problems like anywhere else, but like America is like this beacon of freedom in the world. I love that. So I respect the fact, to say nothing of the fact that I don't even have any relatives that were here before like 1900, right? So, and there's a lot of us that could say that, but I respect the fact that people want to come here. I also respect the fact that, frankly, people are coming from very difficult situations, and we have to fix our immigration system from a cadence standpoint to make it actually better on the legal side. So people are like, well, f it, I'm going to run for the border. I understand that. We still have a job to not let that happen, though.
Yeah.
And in letting that happen, you will get the vast majority of people coming across the border are exactly that. They're looking for new hope, new life, a job, whatever. Within that, though, when you have such an influx, you are getting some very bad people who are coming across too. It's not just cartels. It's people from other countries. It's people who are leaders of gangs that are going to start that here. And the minute those people come into this country and then, I don't know, do some gang shit or something and kill someone, what do you think's going to happen? Of course it's going to get politicized. And I hate how that happens to like such an extent sometimes, but I get it.
Yeah. It's crazy because, like right now, the Tren de Aragua,
from Venezuela,
they're getting a lot of negative press, and as they should, right? But it's used politically. You know what I mean? Like, it sucks to see these illegal immigrants come across, right? And they're called non-citizens, and is the term that people are using now to be less offensive, whatever the case. But non-citizens, illegal immigrants, however you want to use that, is they're coming in here illegally. Then they're given their notice to appear. So now they're here. And then from that point, whatever they do at that time while they're waiting is up to them. It's also proven that only 2%, 3% come back to the NTA to come back to evaluate their case, just statistically.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Only 2, 3% even come back to allow the immigration judge to determine their case. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's crazy. Right.
That's
so that
nuts.
alone is like, that statistic isn't good. We got to figure that one out. But, the hard thing for me is being in a position of like the journalistic side of it, like trying to be fair on all sides of this, is as much as these non-citizens, illegal immigrants are committing crime, and so is American citizens. And we're using, but they shouldn't be here. I get it. But like, we have an issue across the board too, and so multiple. But that one stings more. It definitely stings more because you're like, wait, but this is when we could have stopped. Yes. Internally, we have our issues, right? Internally, we have our issues. But this one should have been stopped. This one should have been.
That's the problem.
It should have never happened. Yeah. And that's the problem. You know what I mean? Like, we have to make sure that we're all also saying like, but we still have a problem, guys. There's still people, Americans, right? There's still Americans murdering Americans. Like, let's be honest with ourselves here. But this one definitely is one that we could have stopped, especially because we had them in custody. We had them processed. We have all their information. And so that's where it gets like, this is a slippery slope.
Yeah. And you're partially Mexican.
Yeah, I'm half Mexican, half Puerto Rican.
Okay. I believe it was your grandma.
Yep. She came over illegally by stealing her sister's identity.
Can you tell this story, please?
Yeah. So I asked my mom about this the other day, and my mom was like scared to tell the truth. I'm like, my grandma's passed. Don't worry. They're
we're not going to send her back.
They're not sending me back anymore either. Right? We're good. So, my grandmother, she was born in Mexico, but the border of Mexico and El Paso. And that border is just right there, right? It's not a big deal. And so back when she was younger, it wasn't uncommon to just come across, do your shopping, hang out. Your family was there too. So there was family that divided by the river, right? The Rio Grande River. And so it wasn't uncommon just to come across, spend the day, and go home. At that time, they were still trying to figure out where they're living. My grandmother, my great-grandmother had one of her daughters in America, so that's considered an American citizen. My grandmother was born in Mexico, so she's a Mexican citizen. My great-grandma, I guess my grandma's sister died at a very young age, who was an American citizen, and they thought it would be best for the future of my grandmother to take her identity. So she took the identity of her sister, and, there you have it. Boom, we're in America.
So but the point being, like, this is like a full circle kind of thing with you, because then obviously that was a long time ago. It was a different type of situation, but now you find yourself on the other end of that, where some other people who, maybe in some cases could be like your grandma, are trying to come across, and it's your job to stop that.
Yeah, that's not lost on me.
Right?
You know what I mean? It wasn't lost on me as an agent either. There's times where you you apprehend this mother and her kids and just them, and you're like, damn, this is one of those moments that you wish you didn't catch. But, the other side of it is like, you got to do your job, right? And
Yes.
it's just the convicted in me to do my job. I'm going to do my job. But it's one of those ones you're like, dude, this one I could have missed, guy. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, I could have been, I could have went and got some tacos at that time, and then you just missed them. But I didn't, And when you work on a board, there's a lot of tacos, bro. But yeah, dude. So it's tough. It wasn't easy for me. My favorite part of the Border Patrol was going to a special operations unit because the mission was more focused on disrupting and dismantling the cartel, right? Or
Yes.
drug smuggling organizations. So I was happier to be in that side of it, but it doesn't take away the value of what that job is and knowing it's an important job no matter what. I personally, it wasn't easy. I'm someone who's very empathetic, If you read the book, I jumped in to save someone's life, the water, that no one was like, you shouldn't do that. And I was like, well, I'd rather.
Story. Can you tell that one, please?
Yeah, I was 30 days into the Border Patrol. In the Border Patrol Academy, they put you through this kind of basic life-saving water techniques for your uniform. We watched a video of two migrants, attempting to cross, losing their footing, and then drowning. And what happened was one lost his footing and started drowning. The other one went in to try and save him, and then the other one drowned the other one trying to save his own life. And like just the unfortunate thing about people panicking in water, they tend to drown each other accidentally. And I knew that, my years of military, we learned some of the water survival stuff already. So I kind of was very familiar with it. I grew up swimming since I was little, beach, boogie boarding. I understand the water very well, very confident in it. And so 30 days into the job, I hear a commotion across the river. Families are screaming. One of the guys who was attempting to cross lost his footing. He started drowning himself. And I thought it's probably 45, 50 meters away. I don't know what it is, but he was probably 75% on the other side still. And I knew I can get to the distance. It didn't scare me. I knew the water was going to be cold. And so I told my supervisor at the time, I said, hey, do you mind if I go? He goes, no, dude, I don't recommend it. I said, bro, I don't think I can sit here and watch this any longer. I got to go. He said, okay. So I handed him my gun. I took off my pants, took off my shoes. I took off my top, but the top got stuck on the wrist because I was so trying to rush. I just ripped it off. So it's me in a shirt, my boxers, my socks, and a cuff still on. And I started swimming out that way. The current was pretty strong. It was pushing us kind of to the left. And as I got to him within this distance, me to you, we both kind of got washed up on a low spot. And we just looked at each other. And I was like, he was like, gracias. And I was like, yeah. Turned around and I just swam back. I was like, what, that was weird, right?
And did he go back?
And he went back. Yeah, he went
border?
back to the other side. He found a path to walk. And the agents were like, it was kind of half and half. Half of them were like, what the were you thinking? And the other half was like, bro, that was dope to watch. Thanks for trying, right? Because it's conflicted position to be in. You know what I mean? I can't watch another human drown, whether they're American or not. It's just not in my character. So, and I know how to swim really well. So I was like, I'll try. And I was gonna dude up so he didn't drown me, right? Like I knew what I was gonna do if he tried to drown me. I was gonna give him some and turn him around and rescue the. Right? I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't just gonna be like, I hope he drowns me too. I was gonna give him the business just to make sure I can rescue his. But the other half just was like, dude, that's not smart to risk your life for one of them. And I didn't.
There's so many.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that. Personally, I still don't understand that. It's why I went BORSTAR, because like I don't give a who it is. I'm gonna do my best to rescue whoever I can because that's just where my heart's at.
Yeah, I want to break down BORSTAR versus BORTAC and then eventually go into to the Special Forces or the SOG group with it because that'll really get into the cartels. But before that, because you're kind of highlighting it right now, the thing that's really come across to me in learning a lot more about this issue over the past couple of years and then having guys like Jorge Ventura in here and Nick Shirley in here who have been down there reporting on the border, the thing that really comes across is what a humanitarian crisis this is. Forget just, there's the crisis of like securing your country and like that, but the people who are caught in the middle of this, whether it be because they're with abusive cartel coyotes who are killing some of them when they don't pay them enough, or, the fact that they're coming into wild areas sometimes with no resources and, they're left to fend for themselves in the Rio Grande or just the human end of it, which is such a such a sad thing, but obviously we'll get to that with the cartels. It's like, you know, if you have a heart and you see things like this,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable to know that in the year 2024, in the confines of our country, basically, because we're talking about on our border, we have people who are encountering deaths that are similar to like you would see in the show 1883.
Yeah.
Like I can't wrap, and you had to see that up close for so long.
Yeah.
Do you ever get to wrap your head around that, or is it just like you get desensitized to it?
Yeah, I think it took a long time to understand that's not normal. You know, I was at war, right? We did see dead bodies there, you know, so it wasn't the most uncommon thing. I think I kind of disassociated at the time, just kind of did my job. But it is, you start to like, damn, that's crazy. You know, I think it was Del Rio last year lost 166 people. There's 166 migrants who attempted to cross illegally, died whether it was by drowning or dehydration. Whoa. That's one sector, dude. So imagine these Border Patrol agents who do 25, 30 years of this career field see, you know, several dead bodies a year. That's not normal.
No.
Like, that's a very different, and not like, it's ugly to watch someone drown. Like to see them struggling and try and go save them, and then they disappear, and then you don't see them for 3 more days, and it's just a floating body.
Guys, if you're still watching this video and you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please take 2 seconds and go hit it right now. Thank you.
Yeah. Like that's up. But then to walk up on a body that died of dehydration, in my book I talk about she right with sticks help, and half naked because they just got overheated and they you know kind of lose their mind a little bit, and that's crazy. And then especially as these agents who get the calls of like someone's lost and they try and go out and find them, you know, it's like that's a hard thing to deal with. And so these agents deal with it all the time, and it's crazy. There's so much death at our borders, and that's part of like this humanitarian mission is like 99% of our job is humanitarian mission. These agents are giving these non-citizens their water, their food, they're carrying the kids, they're you know. I'm trying to say anything that's going to get me in trouble. But they're always constantly making sure that these non-citizens, these legal immigrants, are coming over and still healthy and safe.
Yes. We
have EMTs across the nation. The EMT of the Border Patrol, it's to me, it matches with the medical level of what the military has done. They actually had the medical, the medical director was someone who was connected to the military, so it's very similar. But the EMT program for the Border Patrol, bar none, is highly successful what they do. And that's not just for agents. That's for anyone in the border that needs medical attention. The EMTs are there doing their job. So it's like the humanitarian mission that happens daily is insane. And it's just swept under the rug because of the politicalization of what's going on, right? Just the controversy of what they're trying to create from the border. They forget that these guys are saving lives every day.
Yeah.
Let me explain something too that I don't get enough chance to. You've seen recently in these videos in the news where the migrants are coming across and the agents are kind of helping them out of the barbed wire.
Yes.
Very controversial when you see it. But when you understand it, that barbed wire is already on American territory, and that barbed wire is about 50 to 100 meters from where the actual entry of the border. So those individuals have already crossed into America. They're here. There's no way, shape, or form is a border agent going to grab a shield and shove them back in the water.
Right.
But that's what people think. Like, hey, why don't you just stand there and hold off? Well, like, hold up. It's not our position to do that. My job is to, if you enter this country illegally, I apprehend you and put you through the process of what we have in our immigration system. Not to be shield-bearing freaking riot control, shoving them back into the water. Because if they drowned, that's another liability. Now it's your fault. See what I'm saying? So my job is never to push anyone back. I think the misconception of the American people is that we're supposed to stand there with shields and keep them back. That's never been the job of the Border Patrol.
No, it feels to me, and I think this is actually something that reflects pretty good, in my opinion, on the Border Patrol. It seems to me that it's less being a police and more being let me explain this because I don't want to get these terms like up, but more being like the escort to the system, in the sense that it's like, okay, most of the people crossing, they're tired. They've maybe had to travel with a coyote for thousands of miles or whatever. And like, they're poor, they got nothing. They're not necessarily coming there with an Uzi trying to blow your head off.
Right.
So rather than like, go on the floor, get on. It's not like that. It's like, okay, come over here. relax, let's do our job now. And it seems like, again, I only see limited video, but there seems to be usually like a very good rapport, like people comply and they talk with you. And so you guys are not upper escalating the situation.
Exactly. So for the most part, currently, during my time it was a little different, but currently they're walking up to us and saying, I give up, essentially, right? They're like, hey, I'm seeking asylum. And so we're like, okay. Because the processing that because what is told to the agency now is like, they're allowed to claim asylum. And all we can do is process them for the higher echelon of the immigration system to make a determination, not us. Right. So the misconception is people are like, man, he's just letting them in. It's like, no. He's actually protecting them because they're already on American soil. They've already entered illegally. There's no going back from that. And now he's just making sure that they don't further harm themselves because the barbed that's put into place by the National Guard was a conflict of interest of it was two agencies kind of going head to head and kind of a posturing.
Yes.
And so the agency's like, I'm still going to allow them to come across. They're already here. Like, let me just help them not get further hurt. Or else we're going to still have to put them into our hospitals and help them anyways. So there wasn't anything wrong with that. The one thing that was wrong was the knuckles. There was an agent who knuckled. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, you're still a professional. So just like, let's be careful. I understand, though, the position he took and like the knuckles, it was like just a lapse of judgment. But it was like also like,
it looks bad on a poster, but in reality, it's a quick 1 second.
It's one of those like, you shouldn't have done that because now the world's like, oh, look at him, buddy, right?
It's like you ever seen the players, sometimes they walk off and they fist bump the ref and the ref like fist bumps back. It's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
It's same with my kids. Some kids will be like, hey, Dad. And I'm like, don't knuckles me, bro. Give me a hug. You know what I mean? But like, it's just a thing. So
yeah, one of his 20 kids.
Right.
Wait, what's your name again?
Yeah. So it's a tough one that puts the Border Patrol in the American eye that doesn't understand it. They're like, man, why aren't they stopping them? Like, it's not our job. A law enforcement officer pulls someone over, and if they pull someone over for a high threat potential, right, some kind of speeding, whatever, sometimes they're getting their hand on their gun and they're walking up in a posture like, here we go. This guy elevated his situation, made me fear that he's probably going to run. And if it gets escalated, boom, punch out. There is almost no time in the Border Patrol apprehending illegal immigrants, right? These non-documented crossed illegally. Are we ever going to walk in a posture like that? Ever. It has to genuinely shift like I have to see something really happen. I'm like, oh crap, I got to pull my gun out. It almost never happens because when it's just an illegal immigrant, even if they're running from me, I'm not pulling out my gun for someone running. I got to catch the mother. You know what I'm saying? And then I'm going to take them down. And at that point, if they don't digress, well, then I have a bunch of tools here that I can use before I even get to that point. So an agent ever pulling out his gun for an illegal immigration situation is very, very, very rare. They'd have to be in a fight. If the dude reaches for my gun, boom, game on. Here we go. Right? Reaches for anything on my belt, game on. Here we go. But that's almost never the case. During my time, almost, I'd say 50% ran. And it was okay. It wasn't like, again, it was just like, go, boom, 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 tackle, slow them down or get to them and they slow down, whatever it is. But it's not even aggressive at that point. It's like, got him. And then you do your interview. You're in this country illegally. They say, yes, cool. Now you're under arrest for being in this country illegally. Boom, put them in the thing, put them in the truck and take them. Like, it's not a stressful event. What was stressful was drugs. Then you're like, okay, that's a different animal. This is a different beast. And that is, so the average American doesn't know how to dissect that as well because they don't understand the career field and they view it all as one thing and it's wrong. I said in the book, we wear many different hats. And when someone understands the job, they'll be like, man, what a complex job. Like it absolutely is complex because it's more humanitarian than anything, but then it could be a lot of other things as well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about when you came in and start at the beginning with that because I think this will help define the different levels of it that we've been hinting at today. So you come in to join Border Patrol in 2009, and I might mix up the acronyms now, but I think when you come in, you start, is it BORTAC, and then you ended up BORSTAR?
No, I was BORSTAR the whole time. I was attached to BORTAC. And so... Okay. So in 2009, I got into the Border Patrol. After 2 years, I was allowed to try out for a special operations team. During those 2 years, I just learned how to be a good Border Patrol agent. I learned how to cut sign, which is tracking. I learned how to, pull the drag, identify footprints, all the basic stuff what an agent does in almost every sector. It's very similar. Questions with that?
Yeah. Can we dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. So
what are some tactics you do?
A regular agent is really good at identifying disturbances in the soil. There's areas across the nation that are called drag roads. It's very obvious, and it's not a secret. This is not something that like I'm telling any kind of information that's secret or anything. But these drag roads are just roads where we connect these tires or these drags to the back of our trucks, and we drag real slowly and clean the soil. We do it for about an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. Then we turn around and look at it slowly and see if there's new footprints. If there's new footprints on it, game on. Here we go. People crossed.
Got one.
There you go. Yeah. Now, if I just started my shift and I go and cut the drag, which we call it cut the drag, I go stick my head out my window and go really slowly with a flashlight at a good angle, and you can see the disturbances. Hey, I got sign here. You call it in like, hey, I got sign here. I'm like, yeah, that was last shift. Okay, cool. Then it's old work. Right? Potentially, because you know the areas everyone has, like, it's like in a stadium, you're like, hey, I'm sitting at 102. Same in our, we can say, hey, I'm over here, and everyone identifies it. Say, hey, I just got signed here with 5. One of them's wearing running W's, one of them's wearing this, and they go, yeah, that was last shift. Okay, cool. So you brushed it out, it's done.
How big an area was, you were at Eagle Pass at the beginning?
I was Eagle Pass in the beginning.
Okay, so how many miles are you guys responsible for?
Man, that's maybe 60 miles. Maybe 60 miles.
All right, that's a lot.
It's not a lot of some others, but I think 60 miles. Yeah,
Yeah, still, but to the average person like me, that's a lot of
good.
space.
Yeah, pretty good. And there's different terrain, right? There's some that's like houses, like really close to the housing. Sometimes it's more of the river. Sometimes it's ranch, and so it just depends.
So you have different terrains to deal with. There's challenges there.
One agent maybe covers 10 miles, maybe. You know what I mean?
That's what I was going to ask. So you have one agent per 10 miles?
It could be. Yeah, it just depends. All the terrain is different. Dude, there's times we're in an area called Quemado. Bro, that's like the scariest one for me. I was like, this feels like heebie-jeebies every time I work here at night. You know what I mean? Because you never, it's a really weird terrain. It has cane. It has these really weird offshoots of the river that kind of trickle in there. So the river's really good for them to kind of bring boats across, load dope. And that area was really good for dope, like really good for dope. And so working there at night was a little bit sketch for me.
Alone sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. But you have another agent at, Los Moros, I think it's called, and then another one.
What, like 20 miles away?
No, probably like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
15-minute drive, yeah. But that's
15 minutes. Hold that bullet for 15. My guy's going to be here. Gracias.
The work is weird, man. The work is... So if I had a sensor go off, just to give you if I had a sensor go off in a Quemado, and it's an area where I know, like, hey, this number is a good number. So it's like this: the sensors go off, and if they say, hey, it's a 1 hit, that don't sound good, and then go, hey, it's 35 hits. You're like, damn, that sounds serious, right? That's how we kind of identify like what it looks like. Either way, you're gonna go confirm what it is, but when you hear it, you're like, hey, that sounds good. Then you call your boy, like, hey, bro, get over here. I got a sensor went off at 45 or something. He goes, yeah, I'm on my way. Boom. So then, whether you're eating lunch, don't matter. Boom, they're on their way, right? And that's when you start to work. Like, hey, I'm going to go down to the sensor. I'll let you know what's up. Or, hey, let's go in together if it's a really sketchy spot. And that's how you work. And that's the only way you know how to work. Sometimes you have 2 of you, certain areas, and sometimes only 1. And so that's how the Border Patrol kind of does it. That's why it's not easy. It's not an easy job. And that's also why the wall was important and still is, because there's areas where...
I thought you guys were building it. You weren't out there with the bricks and all that No?
Well, the funny thing is, like, the wall was already built before Trump. He was just fortifying other positions that still needed it.
Right.
And so it was weird. It was a weird conversation.
He wanted to gold plate the wall.
Yeah, I don't know. We needed the wall in certain areas that helped us slow down the traffic.
How realistic is it across, forget the Canadian border for a second, across the Mexican border where you have all these different terrains? It could be, at one point it's a river, at another point it's a mountain, at another point it's a tree. How realistic is it to actually even build a quote-unquote comprehensive wall? You kind of can't, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be places where there's natural terrain that serves as the wall, no?
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. The wall that he was talking about was areas that needed it to help in slowing down the traffic and also helping detect the traffic. There's areas that are just like no wall and in the middle of nowhere, like, bro, we'll never get there. And so adding the wall to that actually helped the Border Patrol do their job. The wall wasn't a single answer to all illegal immigration. It was part of a robust system that helped. The wall plus sensors, plus cameras, plus agents in strategic locations. All that is what helps the Border Patrol do their job, not just the wall. It's just one part of that robust system. And so most people didn't understand that. Like, we already have the wall in half the places that we need. We still need more because it slowed down the traffic. Does it stop it? Absolutely not. They'll still go over it. They'll still go under it. They'll still go through it. but it slows it down, and that's what we needed. That's what the wall was about. People still don't understand that, and that's where the wall is a figure in their head as like racism. Like, no, that's not what it was. It really the wall's
it's
been
because
there.
of the guy who said it.
Right.
It's
That's all it was.
It's
Right.
like whatever he says, opposite. Right?
Right.
And it's like that's where they have like that Trump derangement syndrome thing. And I mean, obviously the guy's incendiary. You don't gotta like him.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean every single idea is rooted in racism or whatever.
Well, dude,
you
the
know?
crazy part was Obama built the wall right there in Eagle Pass. And
Obama built the Eagle Pass wall.
a lot of it.
Wow.
The wall was up. Well, during Obama's time, the wall was going up. The wall was going up during Obama's time. Like, I don't know, like that. I don't know why that's confusing for people. It was up. They were building it. Bro, they pushed people out of their houses that have been there for generations just to put the wall up.
Wait, they used eminent domain to build a wall?
You're right, they did, dude. Right? I'll show you the house. I can go to the house and show you the house.
Get out of the house.
The family was pissed because they built a wall right through their area.
Oh my God.
In Eagle Pass during his time. And so it's funny that it became a political thing because it did. But this thing has been happening, man. And it was necessary. We needed it.
Do you guys back at the Border Patrol? Because again, I know like you talk with a lot of your guys over the years since you actually have not been there as an agent since 2015. Like, what's the political talk like? Do you try to ignore it, or is it
I'll
just
say this.
like
during the debate? And remember, like Biden said that the Border Patrol backs him, and then Trump said no, they back me, and then the Border Patrol union said we'd never vouch for Biden. That was crazy to me to see that the union, who is not the agency, the union make that public statement. And I believe the union has been very public about what position they feel is best for them. And the union does represent a lot of the boots on the ground agents.
Yes.
And so I would lean more with they have a good grasp on the pulse of the agency boots on ground workers. The union does.
Got it.
And I would just say that's what I would say, because the agents want to pay their bills. They want to go home to their families. And they're the most patriotic people in the frickin' nation because they genuinely believe in the mission of protecting this great nation. They genuinely do. And so they want to do the job where they feel they're doing it. And you know, with just certain policies, it doesn't feel that way. You know, it's a little harder to see what's happening, but they're still doing exactly the job that's tasked to them. It doesn't feel great because they see the backlash of that through the media, through the tren de agua, whatever how to say it. They see that, and it doesn't feel good because they know the backlash goes right to them. And it's for some reason to them and not, you know, the executive branch making the decisions. Yeah. So it's a strange thing, but I would say that if you're looking for the pulse of the Border Patrol boots on ground, the dudes are actually down there doing the work, not the higher echelon. The Border Patrol union has a good grasp of that. Okay.
Now, what about guys? You know, you always would hear about Sheriff Joe Arpaio and some of these dudes along the border who are like sheriffs of towns or something. Like, what's their jurisdiction to take those types of actions versus like where the Border Patrol can kind of come in and be like, no, this is our jurisdiction?
It's interesting because every state will have a different law. Good friends with Sheriff Lamb out of Arizona. He's part of Pinal County. He's Pinal County's sheriff.
Is that a cowboy hat?
The cowboy hat. Yep.
I think Sean Ryan had him on.
Yep. He's a good buddy of mine. You know, he's very outspoken on the subject. He's been able to get so if you understand where Pinal County is, it's not necessarily proxy to the border, but it is proxy to the drama from the border, if you will. You still got to take a lot of miles to get to the border, but they manage and deal with a lot of the freeway that is a direct hit from the smuggling and illegal immigration. So they are given an opportunity to manage some of the border stuff. Yeah. They're given another, I forget what title it is that they're given to the opportunity to enforce. But I don't know, guys like them are good assets and good support to the Border Patrol. Those guys, they support the Border Patrol in their capacity. When they apprehend an individual who is determined that they're illegal, they still don't have the right to do any kind of illegal immigration process. They don't have the federal capabilities to do it. So they can house them if they want to based on their county law or their state law. But
they have
at
to
the end
hand
of
them
it,
over.
they end up handing it over to Border Patrol.
Right.
So the whole thing that happened in Texas, right? This whole thing at Shelby Park in Eagle Pass. Do you remember that, where the National Guard got involved? They kicked the Border Patrol out of the park, or they weren't allowing. Do you know what happened?
No, I don't remember.
Dude, so this is probably February, I think it was, of this year, where there was a massive influx in illegal immigration in the border of Eagle Pass. It was just, I mean, I'm talking, they were coming groves, dude. I'm talking thousands, probably 6,000, 7,000 a day at one point. And it was on the news. You saw
Just an Eagle Pass.
Just an Eagle Pass. It was crazy.
Holy shit.
And so the news obviously blew it up. They made it to look like as bad as it really was. It was bad. You know, the Border Patrol is doing the best they can with that situation. Same thing. You know, they're doing the same process, whatever the policy was in place. But Texas got frustrated and said, Texas, we're going to start doing something about it. And they closed off, you know, Abbott, you know, he closed off the park and put the National Guard in charge of that. And so what they did was they put in Connex boxes and they blocked it. They put up these buoys that people were deemed it could be dangerous. They put up barbed wire. They did everything they can to kind of disrupt it. And it worked, right? It did work. The problem was anytime that the DPS was apprehending those guys in assistance with the National Guard and Abbott's laws, right, that he put into place, they housed them for like 16 days. And then they had to give them back to the Border Patrol. So it looked good on paper. It looked good on the media.
Political show.
Right. It was just a posturing. Like every time they've gone to fight to gain the right of doing an immigration process, Arizona, Texas, doesn't matter. They end up getting the no. And it still gets handed out straight to the Border Patrol, right? And so that's the problem. Is like, it would be great to have them do that, but they don't even have the means to deport. They don't have the ability to deport. They don't have the financial backing to deport. It's expensive as and so they do their best to make the best, you know, waves, and they do their best to kind of slow down the traffic and help in this crisis. But in the end of the day, as it goes up the chain of command, legally, it just gets shut down.
Sometimes it can also, you know, it what you don't see in your backyard, you don't understand. It applies to everything, right? And so you've seen this. One example of the political posturing outside of what you just gave is you've seen, let's stick with Abbott, you've seen him put buses of migrants and send them up to New York. You know, a few years ago, Eric Adams had to take over for Bill de Blasio, who was the worst mayor in the history of mayoral whatever and has actually done like a nice job cleaning a lot of up. But the migrant thing was one thing like he wasn't focusing on.
Yeah.
And Abbott is the governor of a state where he has to. Because he's like, well, easy for you to say up here in New York. So he sends up different buses. I think the Florida guy, what the hell's his name?
Yep.
DeSantis. DeSantis also did the same thing. It turns into a political move and chess piece. That is what it is. But now, like, it's hitting home. Like Alessi here has a YouTube channel where he's been doing videos at some of these sites. Actually, let's get your mic on here. So you've been going to some of these migrant centers in New York and to the people around them as well. And like a lot of the Manhattan citizens are like, all right, this is out of control. I mean, what they're just they're sitting here in a hotel not doing anything, no?
Yeah, everyone is pissed. Like, it was unanimous. Like, if you ask anybody off the street, and I was asking a couple of random people, everyone would be like, oh yeah, the border, it's an issue. And I'm like, so how do you feel about it? Oh, this is horrible. Like, we don't want this. Like, everyone felt the same way. Like, and it's so funny because then you see the media and there's just so much like, oh my gosh, how dare you call me legal aliens? Like, use the political correct term. This is so bad. And it's like everyone in New York City unanimously, like, I couldn't find anyone that was anti for it that's been living there for a long time. You might have students who don't live there, who are there for 4 years.
Students, those are the bane of my existence right now, dude. Students kill me. Yeah, dude. So it's funny you did that because, look, it's like Borderland. I interview anyone who's an expert, right? Anyone who's an expert.
Your show is great, by the way.
Thank you. And if you're an expert, even if it's on a side of the political spectrum that I think is like, oh, this is going to be a battle, let's hear it, right? Because I lead more center.
Yes.
You know, more towards, you know, I carry guns.
Well, look at your issue.
Right. And so these dudes, this guy, he's a brilliant guy. The conversation was good, but he's an immigration lawyer. And and the one question I asked him that I just was like, after that, I was like, gotcha, was like, don't you want a safe school and safe city for your kids? He said, I do. I said, then you should be more concerned about illegal immigration. And he froze in a second. He was just like, yeah, because what happens is these experts, these pseudo-experts as well, who lean towards open the border, lean towards everyone is human, no one's illegal, they're all human, right? There's these political activists kind of organizations that say that. They forget, like, you still want a safe city. And the only way you can determine if it's going to be safe is being able to determine who is coming into the country. This isn't racism.
No.
This is pure, like, I need to know who's coming into this country so I can vet that, whether I want that or not. The same way in the book I explained, when you have a front door in your house, well, then you get to determine who comes into your house. And you get to determine how long they stay as well.
And you also, I love this. I want to add to this. You also pointed out when someone comes to your door, do you just open the door? No, you. If you're a normal person, you look out the little thing, or you like kind of
got the little camera, like, how can I help you?
Yeah, who is that? Right?
I know, dude, and it's no different for us. I don't care if you're farthest leaning left as possible. Everyone could come here, knock down all the walls, like let everyone come in. You're gonna sit there and be like, is my family safe? Because that should be a concern. That should be a concern. And if it's not a concern, you're missing it, because that's an important part of our lives. Is I want to be able to walk the streets safe. I want my kids safe. I want my wife safe. Not saying people that come across the border are all dangerous. Not at all. I still want to know who the is coming.
Yes.
I deserve that right as a country to know who's coming and why. And if the people at bay, who are the ones who are supposed to secure them, if they're doing their interviewing and doing the job, then I'll be like, oh, that makes me a little bit more comfortable that someone is at least kind of deciphering who's allowed to come in and who's not. It's crazy that anyone argue like that's not fair.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know, like you look at our history and how we're a nation of immigrants in so many ways. I mean, three of us in here can all speak to that for sure. It's like even the system that certainly wasn't perfect, but the system of where people arrived on the boat to Ellis Island over here, they at least still had an idea, okay, this person came here, right? They didn't have electronic monitoring. Yes, you got some... I mean, look at the buildings there. They were built by gangs of Italians. So, you know, like there's still some shit that happens, but it's crazy to think that now, you know, 100 years plus later, the system is far more chaotic and we know far less, including like people are ghosts. They come across, we don't even know they came across.
Dude.
That's a whole different thing. And it also leads me to open up the topic of the history of the Border Patrol, because that's another thing you cover in your book. And this is something I had zero understanding of. But this goes back like 100 years or something.
They've been involved so many years doing so many different things, and nobody realizes it. And I put the history of a buddy, Joe Banco, I think his name is. He's the one who wrote that excerpt, because he writes a lot of Border Patrol history books. And they're small little books. You can find them on Amazon.
Joe Banco?
I think it's Banco.
Let's shout him out. Give him some love.
Yeah, Joe Banco. You can put links to his book. I might have it up. Might be Blanco too. my dyslexic ass is
Isn't it Blanco? Is that
it might be. I hope so. Who knows? Either way, he's the one who helped me in that. There you go.
You were right. It's Banco.
There you go.
Now that looks like a stereotypical Border Patrol agent to me.
That is. But the dude is brilliant. He writes these excerpts, these books about the Border Patrol history. They're awesome. And I said, hey, dude, my goal in this book is to give people information. Let me, write something specific for my book. And he just wrote a quick rundown of all the things that the Border Patrol was involved in that were high, I guess, would be considered like high-profile cases. Yeah. And man, we've been involved in so much. I mean, so much so even till now, when you start to now the world is seeing BORTAC and BORSTAR. Now the world is seeing them, and you're like, yeah, bro, we've been around for a long time doing a lot of cool shit.
They were doing stuff like during World War II, like some pretty serious stuff, I think.
I don't know. That's a good question. I know early on, the Border Patrol was created back in the day. It was a 100-year anniversary just recently, right? And before then, it was just several people on the borders trying to, from the Texas Rangers and stuff, trying to help kind of manage that. And then it kind of evolved into the Border Patrol and so on and so forth, and then kind of continued to change. After 9/11, boom, Department of Homeland Security created, the more focus on Homeland Security, right? And so that's where the big shift in my world, that's where I was kind of involved. Boom. From that point on, is that's when it got real, because we started worrying about the terrorist potentials and not just immigration.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about pre 9/11, think 1999, 2000, because I don't know much about this. what kinds of things, like we know a lot of the cells for Al Qaeda and stuff
Yeah.
literally flew here and
Right.
things like that, but also think about all the support they had to have quietly and tacitly on the ground, and if some of that may have come through the border.
Well, I don't know. You know, the individuals who did 9/11 were here on a visa, so they were here legally
That's
on a
right.
visa. But the problem with that visa was that visa was awarded to them. And Sarah, was it Sarah Evans, I believe, who I had her on my podcast. She's incredible. She former CIA intelligence analyst.
Adams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's crazy, dude. She's incredible. But she was explaining how like they were here on. There you go. She's been on Sean Ryan. She if you can have her on the show, I'll get you connected with her.
Yeah,
Incredible.
you just had Boosty on there. I
Yeah.
saw that.
I've had all kinds of dudes,
Yeah, you get a lot.
but she talked about how like she believes that their original visa was awarded to them in kind of in a nefarious way, right? Like in support of this and that. And I'm like, what? And so we didn't get to dig into that, and that's something that's pretty interesting. But since 9/11, the implementation of the whole Homeland Security, it changed everything for the Border Patrol. And that's where the special operations teams have gotten involved, and that's where the future of my career went towards, focusing more towards terrorist potentials and dismantling and disrupting the cartel.
When you first got there, those 2 years where you weren't in special forces though, and you're being trained and then actively as a border patrol agent, again, you're coming from someone who had been in Afghanistan twice, in Iraq in 2005 during Mosul and all kinds of things that were going on there at the time. So like you've seen the worst of the worst, but like how much of it kind of, like you talked earlier about seeing dead bodies and things like that, but how much of it harkened to like you tying in all the things you saw and how that could then be used with the vulnerability of the border that you were seeing, even like back in 2009, 2010.
Yeah, I could see easily like, damn, this is dangerous. I wholeheartedly believe like we were going to get attacked from the border because it was just so kind of porous. Even though we were doing everything we can to stop it, there was dudes that got away. Like we were still calling in gotaways like, hey, I got 2 got away, and who knows who the those 2 were, But I felt like I was really prepared for like the worst if it happened, and not say I hoped it did, but like I think any special operations dude is always like, let's get into some shit. You know what I mean? So I was definitely prepared every night to like, I hope some shit goes down so I can fuck some dudes up. You know what I mean? And
say hello to my little friend.
I mean, every operation, like you just like part of you hopes like, I hope this is the one where shit goes down. You know what I mean? But when you're down there and you hear dudes are coming across and looks like they're wearing vests, you're like, this can get real. You know what I mean? And that started happening. Vests, like plate carriers.
Oh,
yeah, and
that kind of vest.
Yeah, and you see those on the heat, on the FLIR cameras that we have. You can see the body armor kind of changes the heat signature on the bodies, and you can identify when they're wearing vests. But that happens more so when you're in the special operations side of things. After the 2 years when I was able to try out, that's when like my eyes got really open to how much cartel activity happens on the borders. And you hear about it, you see the dope from them, you see the kind of identifying markers for each different kind of cartel little faction. But when you're filing special operations and the mission is to disrupt and dismantle, the cartel, that's when you really start to understand like the intel behind it. And that's when I was finally privy to all that information.
What was in those first 2 years, what was the schedule like for you? Are you on for 3 straight weeks and then off a couple weeks? Are you working 12-hour shifts? How would it work?
It's what was the shift? I think it was, you have your normal 8 and then you have your extra 2, your 10 hours. And then sometimes if you have to go over because you're chasing a group or whatnot, it was possible. But at the time they had a thing called AUO. I think it was like allowed uncontrollable overtime, and so it was like an extra 15% in your pay just so you had to do that extra 2 hours after your shift. But it was a rotating schedule, so for a month or so, I think it was a month and a half or so, you would be night shift, and then you rotate to swings, and then you rotate to days. This is just Eagle Pass. Some areas might have a different rotation system, but I'm just only speaking for the Eagle Pass area. So when you're on days, when you first get the shift, it's pretty good because as the sun's coming up, that's when the action usually happens. towards the swing shift, it's usually kind of a dead shift because it's so much light, you know, why move any kind of traffic during that time? But it does happen, you know. And then night shift is where like most of the action happens. As soon as the sun goes down throughout the rest of the night, there's probably going to be some kind of activity happening. And so
You got like night vision goggles?
yeah,
and all that?
well, if you wanted to, not everyone chose that, right? And depending on where you worked as well, some people were just high point, high vis. That's a form of deterrence that the Border Patrol uses, where you're just at a point where you're just sitting there in your vehicle and just kind of observing and waiting for either cameras to detect something or sensors to go off. And so it really depends on where you worked and how you worked the area. A lot of the time in those 2 years, I was working with a couple really good partners that were very active in trying to find something. And so we would find locations, gather some intel, and work on doing layups. And so we kind of get dropped off and sit there for hours and hoping they crossed, you know, high areas of traffic that we know are common. We kind of sit and wait for that. Probably the coolest you'll ever do, because it's like hunting. You know what I mean? You're like, you're sitting and you're blind. You know what I mean? You're just like, I got five coming. You're like, I see him. Here we go. And then you go, Bada, you know what I mean? And then the chase is on. Really cool work.
If I were coming across the border and I saw your ass running at me, I'd be really pissed off about America. I'd be like, this is not what I signed up for. I got a O lineman coming at me. Jesus.
Dude. So I pulled over a dude one time, and it turned out to be a pretty big case, but it was a dude on the border and going the wrong direction. And all of my investigative like questions, I knew he was there. Right? It was like
going back to the other side,
going towards the border. Oh. And I just saw him like pulled over and looking at his tires, and I'm like, this doesn't look right. Let me see if he needs help. But also, it's an area that usually picks up dope. So like, he's already in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm like, let me go check this dude. And, you know, he's a kid who, in the border town, in that area that I was at, there's not a lot of kids. So there we go. Another suspicion, like, wow, weird, going the wrong direction. Vehicles parked going the wrong direction. He's in an area that known for dope. And he's a kid. And it kept sticking out to me. I'm like, this is strange, man. Like, why is this dude here, this location that always picked up? Okay, I think he's picking up dope, but we'll see. So, hey, man, what's up, man? You need help? He goes, oh, no, man, I was just, my tire. I was like, well, which one is it? And so as I'm doing all that, I'm like, hey, what are you doing here, dude? He was like, I was just, and he's not answering. I'm like, I'm going to ask you one more time, big guy. I was like, are you here supposed to pick up dope? He goes, no, bro, no. I was like, you're lying. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, bro. And he broke down, dude. And he broke down and just started spilling the beans. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm just getting paid to just pick up some load. And I'm just driving up north. I don't know what it is. I'm like, okay.
American?
He's an American dude. Oh, it happens all the time, right? Americans always are the ones who get picked to do this. So he was supposed to pick up this load and head up to San Antonio. I was fortunate enough to be able to break him just for a conversation, right? Just saying, hey, come on, give me the truth, right?
You didn't touch his collarbone?
No, I didn't do nothing. Nothing at all.
Secrets are good here. No one's listening.
I did say at one point, I said, listen, don't try and run because I'll f you up. That was my one use of like pure intimidation. At the time, I was jacked and lean, and I was like, I don't want to fight you, big dog, but I'd f you up. You know what I mean? So I just told him, I was like, look, don't run. I'm gonna go get I'm gonna go make a call. If you run, I'm gonna f you up. He goes, bro, I'm not doing nothing. I was like, okay, good. And we ended up catching the next load, and building a really big case on this. And it was part of it. Yeah, big smuggling kind of
started
network.
Working with you.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah, he started giving us a lot more information, and he started giving us all the contacts that was in his phone that was associated with the pickup, and he was connected to a big smuggling kind of ring that happened in San Antonio. And so, you know, just by chance, you know, right place, right time, and I had the right instincts, the experience of knowing that this is a good drop zone, knowing that this dude didn't look familiar to the people that I know in the city, and he looked kind of lost and confused. They call it articulable facts, just based on experience. And then just my questioning was enough to get enough out of him that I knew like I was right. And then boom, it just kind of blew into a big case.
Wow. I don't know if I'm right to make this, to like draw this conclusion, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like outside of two things. Number one, where you're chosen to be stationed, in your case, Eagle Pass. And number two, when you go into a shift, what area of the Eagle Pass you're told to roam. After that, it seems like a lot of the job is very much on you and your decisions.
Yeah.
And where you're looking and what you want to do and what you want to be investigating. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. You kind of choose how you want to work your area.
Yeah.
There's certain areas you cut the drag and you go back and forth, and then you can sit on a high point the rest of the night if you wanted to. Or you can say, I'm just going to park my car here, high vis, and I'm going to go walk to areas that I know are known for trafficking. And hopefully I fall upon something. And so, yeah, you can be as active or inactive as you want. You find the guys on the shift that work at your pace, and you usually connect with them, be like, let's get some shit done. It's fun to try and find drugs, bad dudes carrying a lot of weight. It's fun to try and get yourself into that kind of shit. I really loved it. And it's also fun to try and track someone for 20 miles and eventually catch them, because why are they hiding so bad? Why are they trying to get away so bad? It made me uncomfortable thinking, who are these people? Because it could just be a dude wanting to work, but it also could be that one dude that has connections to Al-Qaeda that I'm going to miss. And so my head was driven to try and chase that. That's where I was driven, like, okay, I got 5 here. Who are these 5? I have no idea. But if at some point one of these dudes is a bad dude, I'd feel like dog shit for letting it go. So I'm going to work this motherfucker until I can't. And that's how a lot of us thought.
How often in those first couple of years did you run into situations where it was kids, or even situations where you just see kids, like they got left there?
Yeah, there was probably, I think a majority of it is kids and mothers. A lot of time was kids and mothers. The quick trips, the ones that you kind of caught, there's guys too, but for the most part, it was a lot of family units during my time, meaning parents and kids coming across at the same time, trying to, seek better opportunities. It's the majority of what I did during those 2 years was that. There was drugs here and there, right? There was dope loads here and there, but for the most part, unless you're tracking someone like I said, those 20-mile tracks, those 10-mile tracks, those longer, those are going to be pretty good in shape dudes. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're not going to see too many kids walk that far. At some point, if it gets too far and strenuous on the families, they quit and they just come up to the road and you find them and you just take them back to the station. Yeah.
Now, when you run into the drug stuff during those years, you're not in the SOG units yet.
Yeah, no.
So when you run into that, though, and you get a determination like, oh, we got Cartel here, are you required to call them in at that point?
Call them in what sense?
Meaning get them on the scene as well to take this down if this is a part of a greater
the special
smuggling?
operations?
Yeah.
No. The agency.
So you could just do it
the
yourself.
agency manages the whole thing. Yeah, we're good. We catch plenty of dope, and we have no involvement of BORSTAR, BORTAC. Usually, so BORTAC and BORSTAR, we'll get into it more, are very specific missions that they do.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay.
I think we're there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's go with BORSTAR. BORSTAR is Border Patrol Search, Trauma, and Rescue. BORSTAR is the closest representation of, if you have to connect it to a military special operations unit, it would be the pararescue jumpers. We are medics. Some of them are paramedics. Some of them are austere medics, depending on the level, but they all start at EMT level with the opportunity of doing IVs. And so we're allowed to do IVs and throat tubes intubation, depending on the training. So it's a little bit higher than your regular EMT on a box truck, right? A regular EMT that works fire. We're allowed to do IVs. Most EMTs don't. The only reason that the Border Patrol EMT level is allowed to do that is because we're so far from definitive care. So BORSTAR is medics who are also federal agents. So we shoot, right? So it's probably I can say it's a high-level search, trauma, rescue with shooting capabilities. BORTAC is your SWAT. BORTAC is your dogs. These are the dudes who do high-risk warrants. These are the dudes who plan any kind of op when it comes to disrupt and dismantle cartel smuggling in the United States of America on the borders. These are the top dogs. They're highly trained. Some of them are snipers. Sometimes they have medical training.
A lot of ex-military in there too. Sometimes,
depending on the years. Not now, right? Back in my time, there was probably half military. Currently, you don't have as many military as you used to.
Why is that?
I don't know, recruiting. I think it's also the change of the time, man. You know what I mean? I don't know. There was, when I go back and speak to them sometimes, and I'm like, hey, if you're military, raise your hand. And I'm like, oh, not like it used to be. You know what I mean? But just very high trained dudes, really good shape. You know what I mean? These guys are, these are your top notch kind of level guys. They're trained in all kinds of different things, from breaching. We have dogs. They have bite dogs. They have all kinds of stuff. High level dudes. There's some capabilities that they're doing right now that it's the only one in the nation that are doing it. Yeah. So they
can you give an example of that, or is that low class?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So they have Halo insertion training. So high level altitude training for any kind of operations if they needed to across America, right?
Anywhere.
Yeah.
If they get called in. Wow.
Yeah. If they needed to. They have the capability of doing it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
But you went on to the BORSTAR side.
I went BORSTAR. You know, my time as a Army Ranger was good, man. I'm very proud of my job that I did there as an infantryman. But something that my father pushed me to do EMT early on as an 18-year-old kid before I even joined the Army. The medical side has always kind of drawn to me. And I've always felt that my training as an Army Ranger would make me a really good medic because I'd be a trained shooting medic. And so BORSTAR felt like the right place for me at the time. Mentally, I was still dealing with from overseas, losing friends. I lost a couple of friends on a deployment that I missed. I was in the rear. I had to help get all their gear. I did their ceremonies and all that stuff. And you know, that was I was hung up on that for a long time. And I think I just was disgruntled about the tactical world for a little while. I was like, let me just be a medic and be a best medic I can be for these tactical dudes. That's where my heart was at the time. I was struggling with my faith in God, not struggling with it, but questioning, you know, I'm far past this now, but at the time, you know, I started to question, you know, my walk with God in the sense of like, does he judge us for what we do overseas? And so a lot of it was like, well, how do I earn more points back in a way, right? And so let me try and save lives.
What do you mean earn more points back? Because you felt like you were killing, being instructed to go hunt people that you shouldn't have been hunting?
No, it's more so the collateral, and it's the worst term to use for human life, but collateral damage of war. You know, I've seen a couple of missions where, you know, innocent bystanders were killed by us or by the enemy, but whatever the case, that stuck with me for a long time, still kind of bothers me. And just knowing in the big picture of war how often that happens was just was a hard pill to swallow at some point. And so I would just kind of like, if there is a pearly gates and there is judgment, I hope that I'm able to balance that out with being a medic.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was.
Can we take a tangent back on that if you don't mind?
Yes,
on your military a little bit?
Yeah.
Because like you're a serious dude in the military.
Yeah.
Army Ranger. I mean, you know, that's really that's hard to do. We already mentioned you did multiple deployments, but I believe, was it your father who was in the military?
Yeah, he was.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So was that always something when you were growing up that
No.
you wanted to do?
Not at all. I wanted nothing to do with military because my dad was such a scary bastard.
So what changed your mind?
I was kind of in a corner, man. I had a daughter who was born with a woman that I wasn't sure I wanted to be with. You know, I was playing college baseball and trying to chase the dream of being a professional baseball player. That's all I ever wanted my entire life since I was little. And I saw that dream coming to an end real fast because immaturity. I was a big drinker, big partier, big fighter. I wasn't really good with just following what I needed to do. You know, I became academically ineligible. And in the dumbest way, bro, in the dumbest way, I failed ceramics. That's, yeah. Because I just never showed up to ceramics.
That's hard.
That's what I'm saying.
To do.
Yeah, because it was this dumb class that I didn't give two about. You know what I mean? I'd rather sleep in from the long night of drinking. I was hours late of dropping the class, and it would have kept me with my full ride. And I slept in, and I missed the cutoff date for dropping in the last class that would actually lower my GPA. So if I didn't need the class, I could have dumped it, and I still would have had a 2.5. I would have been good enough to play. I would have had a 2.6 or whatever the it was. Grades, yes, but just couldn't get my together. You know what I mean?
Weren't disciplined.
Yeah, no, I was a immature idiot, and I lost my full ride. I tried out for a couple of independent pro teams, got cut because, you know, I was very immature. I got an opportunity to play in Germany, a team called the Richmond Roosters. And
the Richmond Roosters baseball in Germany.
Yeah.
That sounds like where baseball goes to die.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, the program was they would put me in a house. They would pay me enough to kind of eat. I'd play baseball for them for a year and then also turn around and help teach baseball to the younger generation of Germans. But I couldn't bring my daughter. And so that didn't sound like a good idea at the time. And so I just went to the recruiter. I was sitting at a Buffalo Wild Wings. I was yeah. It's
Interesting place to start.
Well, it started at Texas Roadhouse, and then when the shift ended, when I finished work, I went to Buffalo Wild Wings to drink with everybody. Yeah.
So you're sitting at the Wild Wings?
Yeah, we're sitting at Wild Wings, and I'm watching this news video. I don't know if you remember it, but I don't know if it was CNN, Fox, whoever the it was. But a Marine was putting the American flag over the Stomp statue, and his unit pulled down the statue. And it was really kind of a
yes, I remember that.
kind of a timeless thing. And I kind of looked at my buddy, and his family was in studio, and they're crying, and they're so proud of their son. And I was like, jeez, I don't think my family's ever been proud of me like that. And I just felt like if I was going to do anything, it was the right time. You know, it was like, go to war. I lost everything I loved at the time was baseball, and see it firsthand, do the hardest thing I possibly can. And if I die, then it's okay. I've died serving this country. My daughter gets $450,000 for her future. You know, my parents are proud that they have a son who sacrificed his life for the country. And I answer all those questions with just one opportunity of just joining. So I joined as an Army Ranger intentionally, infantry, because let's just go straight to war. And that's what I did. And
so you didn't, this is interesting though. You looked at it like, it's almost like an introspective, like I feel like a failure, like I've let people down in a way.
Absolutely.
And so, all right, what's the ultimate way I could rip off the Band-Aid? Well, if I died for country, I'd be a legend.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was like, there's nothing else. I didn't really care about my life at the time when I lost baseball. It really was a hard thing to do. I played baseball since I was 4 years old, dude. Yeah. I knew nothing else of myself besides baseball. And so it was just a way of like, well, almost running. You know what I mean? Like, join infantry, special operations, we'll see. I had no idea what I was getting into. I did not know 2nd of the 75th Ranger Regiment. I didn't know the Ranger Regiment. I didn't know the history. I knew nothing other than people said it's really hard and you're going to go to war. And I was like, well, I would like to challenge myself and let's go to war. And, you know.
You want the action.
Yeah. And so we went through the training, got through it. I learned a lot about myself, got to Ranger Battalion. Within the first day of getting to Ranger Battalion in processing, Sergeant Red, an NCO came over and goes, get your DCUs. You guys are going to war. And I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to war within the first week of me getting to Ranger Battalion.
As in Afghanistan?
Well, what ended up happening was Pat Tillman was killed. And so I stayed in the rear, and we just did any kind of detail they asked us to, while the rest of the teams got back. Like 30 days, they got back, and within almost 2 months after that, we got deployed to Afghanistan.
What was that like?
It was an eye-opener, dude. It was an eye-opener because you train. We barely trained, so I don't know how to be an Army Ranger other than what they barely were able to show me in the 2-3 months we were there. But I was willing to, like, whatever you need, just say it. Because I was older. I was 23 years old, 24 years old. Like, these kids are 17, 18. They haven't even lived a life, dude. I have a daughter. I've lived a full kind of, like, young adult life already with college and, you know, living away from home and all that. So I wasn't intimidated by anything other than, like, what am I going to expect from this? You know what I mean? And what am I – his name was Sergeant First Class Campbell. He said, you nervous? I was like, yeah, a little bit. And he goes, well, don't worry about it. And he's like, you know, 90% of people go to war, they don't never see anything. You know, I think it was 8%, you know, might see a firefight, and 2% will ever have to engage. I was like, okay, cool.
I like those odds.
Yeah, that's not bad, right? It kind of calmed me down a little bit. And then, you know, the first mission I got to do in Afghanistan, I was part of the Gustav team, which is 84 millimeter recoilless rifle, really heavy thing. But I was a big guy, so they gave me the big stuff to carry. I carried all the weight. The gunner, his name was Phil Tudor, he carried the gun. And one of the first missions we did was supposed to just go to, you know, some rural area in Afghanistan. We ended up not being able to land, so we had to rope, which was a fast rope. And you're like, well, I've done this. You know, I've done this in training twice. You know what I mean? I don't know what the I'm doing here. I have this heavy ass rucksack in the back. I'm going to be the one jumping last or second to last because we have the heavy stuff. And I remember there was tracer rounds flying, and we're like, are we getting shot at? What's going on? And then flares from the helicopter go off, and I'm like, okay, we're at war now, right? Look down, I see 2 people crawling. And I was like, what happened? Did they get shot? In my head, I'm like, everyone's dying. In my head, it's like the worst day ever. fast rope, boom, broken ankles is what happened. Yep. And so take the Gustav off the back. Take the Gustav rounds off my back. He takes the Gustav off. We're now we have to be just regular riflemen, and we're following Sergeant Braza into the rooms.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, you don't, everyone says you don't know what you're made of until the bullets start flying.
Yeah.
Did you feel like your body just went into focus like train mode, or did it more stay in that adrenaline shock?
No, I think throughout my time as a Ranger was like, we trained so much, dude. We trained so much. Like it is like the easiest time in the world when you're in combat, in the sense of you have nothing to stress about other than going to war. You've trained like a motherfucker, so let's get it done. You know what I mean? And I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So like Mosul was like the one where we had a lot of action. And
In Iraq.
Yeah, in Mosul, Iraq in 2005.
So this is like a year or two after.
It was 7 months after. We came back 7 months later. We're back. Now we're in Iraq.
Did you do Ranger school when you came back in between those?
Nope. I did it after Mosul.
After Mosul.
Yeah. I was a gunner in Mosul. I had the chance to go to Ranger school, and I chose to go to the deployment. So at that time, it's like after the first deployment, you're allowed to go to Ranger school, and then you compete with all the other young dudes to have the highest PT test. The top like 10 dudes go to Ranger school. I had an option to do it, but I'm like, well, I don't want to miss Iraq, because when you're there in Ranger Town, like you don't want to miss the fun, right? You want to be a part of it. You're like, you want to be a part of it, and if you already have Afghanistan under your belt, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who thought, but I was like, well, yeah, let's see Iraq. And so when they said, hey, your next deployment's Iraq, I was like, cool, I'm going. And I told my squad, I was like, I'm not going to Ranger school. I'm going to Iraq first, and then I'll go to Ranger school. And then he's like, cool, let's do it. And so that's what I did. I told him, like, I don't want nothing to do with going to Ranger school right now. I want to go to Iraq. Let's go do that.
And this is 2005.
2005 Mosul. That's when it was. So the cool thing about our deployment, I think we had 9 Purple Hearts in that deployment, something like that. We had a lot of action, you know what I mean? And I can't tell you exactly how many missions we ran, but in the 4 months we were there, we did a ton of missions. Sometimes it was 4 in a day.
What kinds of things were you doing?
Kill or capture anyone on a target list, and any kind of intel that happened from there, and called time-sensitive targets. So we were using cell phone information, we were using any kind of intel information, and we were gathering the data, and we were being able to kind of hit the houses where they were at. And so, you'd have one mission, taking out one of the higher guys in the Mosul kind of area. And once you get him, it seemed like phones were going off left and right. So we gathered the data from their phone. We pinged the next person. We find where he was. Boom, we'd go hit his house next. Whoa. And so we're collecting a bunch of dudes, collecting a bunch of intel, and gathering follow-on missions. And we were doing mission after mission after mission. I'm talking like 4 in a night was not uncommon, from doing striker hits and then coming back, grabbing that dude, boom, turn around, going to do an air assault mission, coming back, doing it again.
And most of them were ending with you capturing, not necessarily killing, but sometimes it went south.
Yes, it just depended on how the mission went. Yeah. For us, we were in the mindset of the more dudes you apprehend, the more dudes you collect, the more data, the more information, the more intel, more missions. Yeah.
Right. They're way better alive than dead.
Yeah.
And is that so? When you guys are doing that, are you working with just Rangers, or is that a multi-front?
So during that deployment, we were the main effort for our own selves, and then Delta was we rotated days. If they needed us as support, we're support for them all day long. So the days that we were on mission, they were on QRF for us, or other organizations or other units would be QRF for us. And Delta would never do QRF for, they're way bigger. But if it was a big, serious deal, we could ask for their support. For the most part, we'd have other striker units or whatnot as QRF for us, quick reaction force. So we find ourselves in a bad. We got hit one time with an IED and it destroyed the whole mission. The vehicle in front of us got hit. Boom. Dudes were hurt. All that. The vehicle was like a dead stick. It wasn't going nowhere. So we had to get QRF to kind of pull us out of there. And so things like that happened. We had a day mission where a helicopter got shot. Boom. We engaged on some enemy dudes. During the day, we don't do missions like that too often. Kind of weird. And so we were kind of in a bad spot. Boom. QRF had to come and snag us out of there. And that's just more so for us to have more security, more guns on target, and just get us out in a safe manner so we can tend to our casualties, whatever the case.
Are a lot of these guys you're collecting and, say the insurgency hunting you're doing, was it, to your knowledge, like directly tied into the hunt for al-Zarqawi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So the network we were trying to dismantle in Mosul was the lead guy there, the top dog was if I remember his name, they called him Abu Taha, whatever the case, right?
Abu something.
Abu Taha for sure was his name. Yeah.
I'm going to call him Lake Tahoe from here on out.
So it was the first time in since the war started that we were able to do a mission complete, meaning here's the target we're trying to get. Here's all the names around it. You've seen those kind of target lists where the person in the center and all the people. We were able to capture everyone in here and then also the main dude.
Whoa.
And which was given, we were awarded, a presidential citation award for the battalion because
How many months did that take? That's amazing.
4 months.
In 4 months
4 months. I'm telling you, we did so many operations, bro. So many missions. It was insane. I'm talking like day after day after day after day. And it was just like go, 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 boom. We'd rest the next day. We were QRF for Delta or whoever it was. And then it was so on and so forth. And we were just mission.
Well, you're far past at this. You're a couple years in. You're far past the dude sitting in Buffalo Wild Wings who pissed away his baseball career and is feeling like upset about himself. Obviously, now you're like, all right, I'm a badass. It is what it is. Have you now that you're in the most dangerous place on earth at the time, and you're doing all these high octane missions, is your mind starting to shift again towards like, rather than being, I don't care if I die. Now it's like, whoa, like anytime we go out here, we might not come back.
It's funny. I'm writing a book right now exactly about this deployment and not focused on the missions per se, because I say it's not time for me to tell that story yet. But I'm focused on my internal perspective of how the did I get here? You know what I mean? As a 25-year-old kid sitting in Iraq in my hooch, drinking coffee, blueberry jam on a graham cracker, and I'm like, how the did I end up here? You know what I mean?
Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, it's like 4 days. Yeah, 4 missions in a row. We got contact. One's a hand grenade blew up dudes. Another one's a ID blew up a vehicle. Another one's a ambush in a vehicle. Like we're getting hit, and you're starting to sit there like, God, bro, is it my turn next? And so my biggest issue at that time was my second daughter was ready to be born. And I'm like, my first daughter was a tough one for me because it was my first kid. I didn't get to see her for the first year because I was in Kentucky playing baseball. I joined the military. So not until like I graduated, I saw her, spent some time with her. I got to see her little pockets of her life, but I already knew that I was trying to get connected to her, but I had a better chance of being connected to my second one because I'm there. You know what I mean? It's the same woman, right? I ended up marrying the same woman. So I was like, well, now I'm like older and I'm like, I am pretty good at this job. And I do see a future here if I wanted it. And I want to be a good dad to these kids. Will I get a chance to see her be born? And that's where I said, I mean, dude, we're getting rocketed every night.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, we came back from a day mission. I remember this, like, we parked our vehicle and within not even 50 yards from us, you hear rocket, doom, 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 hit. And they end up hitting some Delta dudes. Like the best random shot ever. You hit 3 of the dopest motherfuckers you can think about. And that's how our deployment was. We're like, you're doing missions, but at night you hear them coming in, you're like, please don't hit me. You know what I mean? And so it's this really weird.
What they call it, Mortaritaville was one of the places.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Well, dude, it was not uncommon for the FOB to get hit all the time right next to us, and you just kind of sit there and be like, is it my time or not? And then your missions are happening, and we're doing some serious targeting. So it's like, is it our time there? And so I definitely was questioning like everything and wondering if I was going to get a chance to see her. And fortunately enough, they flew me home about a week early because they found a bird that I can get home because my daughter was about to be born. And I flew to LA and I was able to watch her be born.
Awesome.
So it was a beautiful thing. But yeah, I remember sitting there questioning it all, like, what did I do in my life that I probably could have changed and not end up here? And I think everything happened for a reason. And, I was there for whatever reasons. And I was very fortunate to be able to get out of there without injury.
Yeah.
And be able to experience it all and learn a lot about myself, man.
What made you, because you did the second one in Iraq, then you do Ranger School, and then you do one more in Afghanistan, then you leave.
Yep.
What made you want to leave?
We lost 2 dudes. After I graduated Ranger School, I had a brachial plexus nerve damage in my right shoulder, so the arm was dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they called it rucksack palsy. I fell during Mountains phase, the second phase of Mountains phase, I fell, and it severed a nerve. I had no idea. I woke up, thought I had a fever, and I told my buddy, I said, bro, I don't feel good. As I go to put on my shirt, I'm like, dog, I think I slept wrong. You know what I mean? I thought I slept wrong. My arm was dead. But it was a different kind of dead. It wasn't like the tingling where it hurts your fingers kind of. No, that was dead. I didn't feel nothing besides I can squeeze, but I couldn't lift. This whole lift portion of the shoulder was gone. And I was like, I don't want to recycle, bro, so I'm not going to say. And so my little buddy system group, we worked through it. You know what I mean? They helped me put my rucksack on every day. You know what I mean? Luckily it was my right hand, not my left. I could still wipe my ass. But yeah, we got through mountains phase, got through Florida phase. I graduated, distinguished honor graduate, like got lucky as
with like
yeah, with one arm,
side.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And then yeah, I was saluting, like holding. Yeah, had to hold it. Yeah, it was pretty.
Wait, it didn't affect the right side of your face.
No, just yeah, I know. It was just perfectly.
And Rambo over here.
I know. And so when I got back, they were set to do a reach back bird is what they called it. So they were going to bring me back to them because they're already deployed.
A reach back what?
Bird. So for Ranger Battalion, if you miss the initial deployment, there's reach back birds throughout the deployment that they can bring you back so you can come back and support the team. Okay. So if you were out of training, if there was a kind of medical situation, this time they went deployed for 6-month period because they did I think it was called a surge, and then they went into the regular deployment cycle. And so they were there for about a 6-month deployment. While I was in Ranger School, they were deployed. Then I got back, and halfway through that deployment, I could have come back for the reach back, right, and joined them. But since my shoulder was like that, the PA, the physician's assistant at the Ranger Battalion, didn't allow me to deploy. So the morning of the reach back bird, I had all my gear. I already said bye to my family. I hugged them, hugged my kids, told the wife, bye, I'll see you in a few months. I'll let you know what's up.
One arm hug?
One arm everything, bro. Right? I'm doing physical therapy, trying to keep the shoulder from locking, right? So we're doing all the things to...
And you're about to go into a war zone.
And I was hoping. And then that morning they said, you can't go. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Thank God.
No, I wanted to go, bro.
I know you wanted to go, but that's not... That's a recipe for disaster.
I thought there was something I could have done. But either way, during that deployment, we ended up losing Bras and Brim to they were clearing a room, and they were shot, and both of them killed in the same room.
The one you weren't on.
Yeah. And so we got the call. Sergeant Red, by coincidence, again, was on reach back because he was injured during a jump. So me and him were the two senior people there. I wasn't an NCO at the time. I was a specialist with the tabs. That's considered, I'm ready to be a senior leader with them, right. Whatever, with the tab.
Where are you when this happens?
I'm at 2nd Ranger Battalion, and we get the call, and we both immediately were just like you can say any other name, and you would be like, damn, that sucks. But you said those two names, especially Sergeant Barraza, it was hard to really believe. It's like the most respected and one of the most influential dude in battalion. And I'm talking across the battalion, that's what I felt. The vibe you got from other people, like, bro, Sergeant Barraza, bro, that dude's the man. Like he's one of those characters. And so when you heard Sergeant Barraza was killed and Sergeant Brim, who was the team leader under him, it was a hard pill to swallow for all of us, and we didn't even know what to do. We were like, what? So we had to call everyone back, and so no one could go home. We had to bring them back and then we ended up kind of just partying and drinking all night in a sense. It was just almost like trying to grieve this shock. And then the next few days was gathering their gear. They already contacted the families. We already talked to them. It was a crazy, crazy experience for us because, like, I already lost one of my buddies to training in Ranger Battalion, and just a very unfortunate event.
Wait, he died in training?
One of my buddies died in training.
What happened?
We go through cycles. Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie goes through cycles. We're doing a live training, and so there's these buildings that are built in a way where you kind of keep clearing forward, and if any of the targets move, it could potentially be put in a bad spot. Well, the range safety officer at the time wasn't paying attention to the target dropping and lifting it back up. Eventually, the target moved to a location that became what we call hot wall, and they shot through the target and hit my buddy right in the throat while he was pulling security on the other side. And so he was killed in training. And that was the first time I lost a friend in the military. And that one
in training.
Yeah, that's was hard. That was hard. And he was an incredible kid. We went to basic training together, airborne together. RIP, we started, and then he ended up having it recycled, but really good friend of mine. And that was the first, like, holy shit, I just lost a really good friend. And in a way that I just was like, damn, that's crazy. People got in trouble for it, right? Like, they got in trouble for what they did, but it's kind of an unforgivable event. You lose someone, a good dude like that. But then Brim and Barraza, that was enough for me. I was kind of hurt by it because we talked a lot about what they were doing after they were both getting out, like within months of coming back from this deployment. You know, Barraza's family we were close with. You know, I was close with Barraza. Even though our rank was different, we were still close. I think it was just kind of the two kind of big Hispanic dudes. We became close, you know, when one of our good buddies, David Kane, got married. We were all part of the group that carried the swords and all that shit. And even though in my lower ranking, I was the same age as these guys. I was actually older by a year to these dudes. And so it was kind of like we were all same era dudes, but my rank is different because I didn't join the same time as them. And so losing them was a hard one for me. And that's when I was like, yeah, this. I want to try and do something outside of that. And so that's when I started thinking about trying to join the Border Patrol because I knew that was his dream, but like maybe it could be mine too.
Yeah. And what's interesting is going back to when you first thought to join, you were just callous about your own life at that point. You're not, you know, you're such a good guy. It's very clear, and I'm sure a lot of people loved you even back then, like when you felt lost yourself. But what ends up bringing it home for you is not like, oh, a bullet just grazed my ear. And I almost lost that. It's more like, oh, when you're in this, your friends die.
Yeah.
You know, like because then you live and you got to live on with their legacies.
That's painful, man. I would have gladly taken the place of any of those dudes. I just think they were better people. You know, I think they could have done more in this world than I ever will. And so I always held them at such a high regard that like I would easily trade places with them. Even today, like I would still sacrifice my life for the greater good. I don't mind it. Even though like my kids would hurt, I personally don't care in the sense of like I'm willing to serve this country. I'm willing to serve a greater purpose. I'm willing to down the street if someone's, I'll protect them. I'll try and help. And if I get killed, it doesn't bother me. It does hurt losing friends. And I've continued to lose friends to suicide since, right? And so like I still have a mission here that I'm working on. But the point is like, yeah, that sucks. And you know, I would much happier. I think for a long time, it's a long time. I was haunted with that idea of like, I wish it was me than them, and that survivor's guilt, and you know, that haunted me for a long time. I was like, it just sucks. It just sucks losing people like that. Yeah,
but you go and do what I believe Barraza wanted to do.
Yeah,
which is be in the Border Patrol
and the special operations.
So that's where we were, and this came up because we were talking about your decision to join BORSTAR instead of BORTAC, because I forget you put it in a really good way, but it was something about
I wanted to be the best shooting medic that they'd ever have.
Yeah, but what was the other thing you said where you talked about like evening the score or whatever a little bit?
Yeah, I feel like I had points to earn with God.
So you make the decision to join BORSTAR. And this is like 2011, something like that?
Yeah.
What's that training like? And we broke down BORTAC,
yeah.
but BORSTAR we were still getting to. So can you just reiterate all the things they do?
Yeah, BORSTAR Search, Trauma, Rescue. And pretty much what I was trained in was swiftwater rescue, long line rescue, search and rescue, medical proficiency with putting even IVs, crikes, you know, chest tubes for breathing, for airways. Any way we can, you know, get someone to definitive care within like 2 hours because of where we work. Trained in tactical medicine, trained in many different forms of kind of the search, trauma, rescue space. And so at any point we can do a lot of those things. And during my time as a BORST agent, I was able to do every single one of those type of rescues, especially swiftwater rescue, because it's weird that the border has those, but they do.
Yeah.
And then, you know, because of my proficiency as a, you know, Army Ranger, I was invited to be the TAC Med guy for BORTAC.
The what?
TAC Med, tactical medicine. Kind of like tactical medicine professional for BORTAC. And so I explain it in the book, and it's a really weird thing. And even today, I've heard that it's still very weird. But BORTAC is kind of built by these, you know, guys who want to be the tactical world, right? They're very SWAT mentality, probably more like a, you know, I don't know, SEALs / Ranger / Deltas, right. Those kind of personalities, type A dudes, kicking doors, lift weights, rah, 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 right? That's all cool.
We've had a few of them.
Right. Yeah, you had a long list of these. Love them all. those are very particular personality.
Yes.
And as much as I was that as well, there's a big part of me that was not too as well. You know, and trying to fit into those worlds was always weird for me because I think I had a lot more empathy for people. And then you have the medics. Now the BORTAC, those really tough guys weren't very excited about BORSTAR when the BORSTAR was created. BORSTAR was created to help migrants and agents, right? And early on, it was search and rescue that was focused a lot towards like, you know, hydration, you know, giving guys hydration and also fixing feet, a lot of blisters of long walks, right? And so they kind of use that as like a, go fix some feet, medic, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, off, right? So it's kind of this internal, like, tough guy kind of happened.
Yes.
It created a lot of division between the teams as BORSTAR kind of gained more taskings and started doing more training and started doing, you know, the big serious special operations mission with kind of the SAR world, the search and rescue world. They also started learning how to do tactical medicine. Tactical medicine is a very important skill set that if you carry a gun, why not be a good tac med, which is the Army had TCCC. I forget what it's casualty collection, something, whatever the case it was. But TCCC was kind of what they used to learn tac medicine. And then eventually BORTAC was learning it as well, but they weren't as proficient because these are already medics. You know what I mean? And so at the point when I joined, there was a little bit of a conflict for me as a tactical dude to teach medics tactics of the medical. And so we went through a little bit of a phase of people not really liking that I was teaching medics how to be tactical. I believe it's extremely important if you're going to be attached to BORTAC to be able to be proficient at tactics as well.
Oh yeah, dude.
So
These are shit. You're dealing with cartel, motherfuckers.
I know.
Serious shit.
Because this weird internal struggle, I fit in really well because I was the tactical dude now connected to them. So they attached me to them for a lot of their missions. Wasn't as common as you would think. And so it was me and one other dude, Chris Smilo, a badass dude and who I absolutely love. Me and him were the ones they trusted. Chris was not a military guy, but he is a very high-level shooter. And so we were attached to BORTAC, and so we would do missions with them quite often. And it was not common. And so I was very fortunate to live during the time where they allowed me to. They also trusted me because of my combat experience to attach with them. And I ended up doing almost the rest of my career attached to BORTAC from that point on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really you straddled the worlds in a lot of ways.
Yeah. A lot of social media thinks I was BORTAC. I was not. I've always said that, but it's because it's not common to see the BORSTAR guy attached to BORTAC as much as I was.
I think I was having in your book. I was trying to follow
I was
that
trying to
a
explain that. It was a little hard. I was a BORSTAR agent. I never got to trial for BORTAC because my career was ended early because I chose to. At the one point I was going to try for BORTAC. I was going through a divorce, and so I didn't want to miss all that drama. And so I decided to focus on that instead. And then I became the single father. You know, I became the custodial parent of 4 kids, and so it didn't really work with my life.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah, and so
daddy's on the borders for 14 hours a night.
Do
your homework.
It didn't work out. So I just stuck with the BORSTAR side of things, but you know, I became attached to them, and eventually lateral transferred over to SOG and started that phase of my life.
Okay. And what year was that approximately?
2013.
So and is that when you started really doing heavy cartel shit? When it was SOG?
No, when I was at SOD as well. When I was a Dirty Bird down in Del Rio, we went over to McAllen for it was a separate
SOD. I'm sorry.
Special Operations Detachment.
And who was?
And that's BORTAC and BORSTAR.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
In Del Rio.
Got it.
So they got assigned a tasking to go down to McAllen. At the time was a hotbed for illegal immigration, but also drugs. And so heavy cartel work down there. And so I did 2 different missions, 2 different iterations, which total of 6 months. Remember, I was now divorced, so I had nothing else to do. And so I was like, let's just go on mission forever. You know what I mean? And so I stayed down in
the kids.
Yeah. I'll see them soon. I got to go to work. But 6 months pretty much, 2 different iterations, 2 different teams is what I mean, is that I rotated for down in McAllen. And so all we did every day was we set up shop and we disrupted cartel organizations.
Now, I really want to dig into this because we hear a lot of the high level, like, oh, there's fentanyl coming in everywhere and stuff, and the cartels run Mexico and now they run America. But like, how organized are their operations coming across the borders versus how much of it is just cowboys trying to, you know, hopefully get it across?
No, it's pretty well organized. Now, I'll state this. During my time, it was heavy marijuana. Very little anything
Really?
else. Yeah, during my time, I'm talking thousands of pounds of dope. And when I say dope, marijuana.
Just weed?
Just weed at the time. It was 2012.
God, they're not even taking a risk.
It was different. So it was a lot of drugs getting pushed across, but it was all weed. During my time, it was weed heavy. You'll see cocaine more at the port of entries. Those are the ones that get caught through the vehicles and all the ways they're disguising that. But during our time, it was a lot of weed, and that was a big deal because that's where their money was. So it wasn't so much like how we see weed now. We're like, oh, just weed? No, dude, that was all their money. They made money off of weed, and they needed to get it across, and we did everything we could to dismantle it. It was so crazy to see the whole city work together to help them get the weed. And this is no, like,
when you say city,
anybody in those towns could be considered a scout, meaning a lookout. And when I say anybody, you see a little abuelo sitting on a chair in front of his house whittling some piece of wood. You pass by and he gets on his phone. And you're like, that's a scout too? Like, no shit, bro. This is not even a joke. We had to change vehicles almost every week because we'd be burned. So much so that one time I got dropped off late at night to go to a high point so I can kind of observe intel that dope was going to be crossing at this point. I got dropped off to a point where I swear there's no way anyone's going to see me and see me walk in 5 miles to a location. That's how, like, we're trying to really, and I'm sitting behind this high-ass shrubbery just waiting for the time to get to the point where I want to go walk forward. So I'm just kind of standing by, and the dude rolled up and goes, "Hey, we see you, homeboy." And I was like, shit, how the did he see me? Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at this, and they all know, the whole city kind of in line. And as soon as they see our vehicle, they're all tracking, and they were able to identify that, and then the mission's burned, bro.
And this is on our side of the border.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Eventually, we were able to track some dope to the vehicle, to the drop point, right, to the house, right? We were able to, this is a pretty big mission that ended up catching, like, the house as well. So now the house is done. But you go to the house that has cameras all over it in the same city, right? This is McAllen, bro. This is small little offshoots outside of McAllen. Cities, little towns called like Rio, La Grulla, like that. They're little offshoots that are all very heavy dope. But dude, this house, like, you walk in, you're like, oh yeah, Cartel owns this, because it's like the dopest house in the area. Cameras everywhere. You know what I mean? There's a little spot where they were doing bondle and stuff on vehicles so they can hide the dope and stuff like that. Yeah, so like it's a very, very orchestrated thing.
And weed's hard to move because it's so big and it's so heavy.
Yeah.
Coke much better.
Yeah, well, once the big bundle, once you cut the bundle, then there's little bricks. Yeah, so those big bundles you see on TV are just the wrapping, the out wrapping. Once you cut that open, then there's just little bricks. It looks like kilos. And so
weed.
Yeah.
Just little bricks in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's still statistically I mean like the amount of money you can make on this much
Correct.
coke versus
Right. But at the time,
mean.
that was the demand. At the time, that's the demand. So they're making their money. They're making plenty of money, and they needed to do it. So at that time, that was their biggest market with the lowest amount of, like, risk.
Were you guys, I mean, you told the one story 40 or 50 minutes ago about the dude who looked off being in the area, and then turns out he was smuggling drugs and became a source. Like, were you guys within these towns also constantly trying to get CIs and people who would be on your side, or was that really, like, hard to do?
The Border Patrol themselves, us and Special Operations, do not do that.
Allegedly.
Right. There was ways of, we would gather intel just by being in the right place at the right time. That would help you learn more. Barbershops were really good. I go to barbershops. I know what I look like. People talk very freely. They don't think I'm a agent.
Pull the badge out.
You're all say nothing. You're like, okay. But, like, you're able to get enough information. And at the time, people weren't looking at their biographical data that they were putting on pictures, whatever they call that, right? The geotags on the photos.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're able to kind of go onto Facebook and grab some of their information, know exactly what they're going to be, see where they hang out, and be able to apprehend people in ways like that. So there was a weird, loose version of investigation, but we weren't capable. We didn't have the capabilities of it. We were able to just kind of put enough pieces together and be like, okay, this dude's a big dude in the game. we know how to get him.
Do you do some of this stuff? Like, are there times where the DEA is coming in or other agencies are coming in and you're a part of the mission, or you're told to stand down?
There's things like that. There's task force, there's attachments. A lot of BORTAC gets attached to, U.S. Marshal warrants. We have the numbers, so we have the teams, so we can be facilitating the marshal warrants for them, things like that. And so we do a lot of, BORTAC does a lot of warrants on the border.
Yeah.
In assistance with other organizations.
Okay. Now, a lot of these cartel guys, though, are also heavy into human smuggling.
Yeah.
And I have to say this to the camera right now. Everything we're discussing today is in an educational context. It is strictly that way. We are not showing any images on the screen. This is someone who is a professional in the scenario describing it for the people at home, just like you would in a classroom. So we are complying with the fully monetization principles. We've had a lot of problems.
I love that.
With this on YouTube. So we'll make a mark of that timestamp. We'll put that at the front. But anyway, so, a lot of these guys are moving in bodies.
Yeah.
They're moving in. It could be anything from, and this has been going on for a long time, it could be anything from people just looking for a new life who then, pay them whatever they can, whatever money they've saved up to be able to do it, to, some illegal smuggling of people that are not necessarily voluntarily coming, including kids who are then sold into God knows what.
Yes.
Do you remember your first experience with this and realizing what was happening?
During my time, this is probably not the best explanation of it, right? During my time was like, once I was in BORSTAR and attached to BORTAC, it was genuinely focusing on dope. The big time is when I started doing the investigative side of it, of the journalism side of my life, the Borderland, and that podcast is when I really started to learn heavy into this, interviewing people that are experts in the field, investigative journalists from different organizations.
Wow. See, back when you were doing it, you didn't see this as much, and now you're seeing it like crazy.
It wasn't like the topic of conversation. Whoa. Like, you see human smuggling in the sense of a bunch of people crossing and a coyote is following them, right? That version of it. The very common migrant who crosses with 20 people, and they're just trying to get across. And those are majority of the time people really just trying to work, right? You saw that. And if you caught the coyote, cool. Normally the coyotes were like 14, 15 years old. So the Texas,
they were that young?
Yeah, because Texas wouldn't process that because that's not an adult. And you deport them back to Mexico, and they come around and do it again next week. So much so that they would roll their own fingerprints and be like, "Where's my burrito and my drink?" Like, they knew the system. They knew the system. And eventually Texas got they understood that, and they started kind of trying to prosecute some of these as adults when they were 16, 17. But the cartels would use young coyotes to do the smuggling. Whoa. And this, like I said, this was a different kind of smuggling, bro. This was genuinely, majority of the time, real people just working. And I say working kind of like not the threats that you would normally think of that's happening now. The threats then were just illegal immigration, your average migrant that most likely was some kind of worker who crossed for whatever reason and needed to come back, right? So it wasn't what you see today. What you see today, and this is solely based on my investigative journalism side of my life with Borderland and all the experts that we interview and learning from what's happening in the world. Now, the cartel has shifted. They don't make great money off weed anymore, so you don't see it as much. They make a lot more money off of human smuggling. And this is across the world, human smuggling. I'm talking Africa, India, Afghanistan, Turkey, China. Like, when you start talking those exotics is what we used to call them, that's where their money is now big. And that's where they're making so much money off it that, like, the drug side of it, when I say weed, is almost, you don't even see it very often. Care. Doesn't happen often. You're still got your cocaine in the Keys, right? You still got cocaine in, because that's a good form of means of travel and way you can circumvent the system through the water, right? You still got your on how that's transported and all that, but like genuinely like bundles on backs with weed is almost, you don't see it as much. You see bodies because that's where the money is. So the shift in this whole system has gone strictly heavy exotic bodies.
When did that happen? to the best of your estimation?
And I really think it happened. It happened a lot during this administration, only because the loophole system of the asylum situation. And I'm not like, this isn't like, oh, it's their fault. I'm just saying, as soon as you see that there's a system that is in favor of smuggling, they exploit it. The cartel is very, very smart. These transnational organizations who make money off of this are very smart. They see what we put in place. They say, how can we beat it? There we go. And that's why you have this massive influx. Because they're
That creates demand.
right. And they show up with a paper of an address, and they just walk up to him and be like, seeking asylum. Boom. And you're like, holy crap. I mean, if you just live in San Diego, if you live in any of these cities, you'll see it just by you'll see it, and you'll be like, oh, like I was driving to the airport, and there was 12 Taiwanese just standing there on the corner, and you're like, oh. And I watched them, and then an Uber shows up, or not Uber, what are those food Ubers called? I don't know.
Postmates?
Whatever food one is, they dropped off food for them. And they sat there eating Vietnamese food, dude, or Taiwan, I don't even know. And I was like...
All the same area.
And they just crossed. So they have enough knowledge to know that, hey, you can cross, you can order some food, and you just stand by and seek asylum, and you're good.
Yeah. So when I had... I want to get to some of the stuff Jorge Ventura talked about because he's been doing some crazy reporting on this for a while. But when I had Nick Shirley in here for episode 214, one of the things he was able to recover was actually the Chinese directions that the Chinese nationals come here with.
Yeah.
And he had it translated and everything. And it has down to a T, down to when they're 30 towns and 4 courts into the system legally.
Yeah.
As to where to go and what to do and where to be and how to be. And it's like, if you are looking at this, and you think about this because you were in the goddamn military, right? Like, if you're looking at this from a national security standpoint, yeah, I'll bet some of these people are perfectly fine. It's whatever. But I'll bet some of them aren't. And I'll bet some of them are here for reasons that maybe serve the CCP.
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed enough of people that all in agreement that there's a good majority of the Chinese nationals that come into this country illegally have ties to the CCP.
And I mean, I agree, to be clear. But what are they basing that off of?
Based on their experience in intel. You know what I mean? There's a gentleman, I can't think of his last name, but his name's Corey. He just recently, testified about this whole thing. He lives on the border. I'm going to get you connected with him because he has an incredible story. But he recovered several phones, and he was able to get into the phones. And from the phones, they have Telegram. And there's hundreds of telegrams that tell you everything that's happening. And from directions, everything you can think of, conversations about how to do it, when not to, anything that happens politically, immediately something pops in there about like, hey, it's a good time now. You guys, right.
Come across.
Yeah. You know what I mean? All the concerns with Trump.
Catholic NGOs on your side. Let's go.
Right. I did a whole thing on the NGOs, man.
Oh, no. All right, put a pin in it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get you off this.
Yeah, but so there's enough investigative journalists, there's enough independent reporters that are seeing these cell phones, and the information and the intel gathering is so thick, dude, that it's actually like, how are you not concerned with the potential, what this looks like? These transnational organizations are communicating exactly how to get into this country, exactly what to say, exactly where to go, and who to use. And it's like, this is like a very intricate system, and it's making the cartel more money than what we did.
Leslie, can you pull up a map of China farmland U.S. military bases? Have you seen this?
No, I've heard.
All right, well, it's not a great. Yep, there it is. So, what we're looking at on the screen here is where I believe it's the red is where Chinese nationals or Chinese multinational companies and stuff own a significant amount of, let's call it just land for purposes of this, and then all of the black spots, which you can see are over the red, are some famous forts we have around the country. There's even Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where all the alleged UFO stuff is, right? So when I see something like this, to dovetail off what your intel guys are saying, I go, causation, correlation, looks pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's scary, man. Real quick,
is.
I
Go
just
ahead.
gotta go to the bathroom.
Go for
and then We'll be right back. All right, we're back. I actually want to get to that NGO stuff because you have me curious. You said you did a lot of shit on NGOs.
I did a whole episode on NGOs from an independent investigative journalist who looked into the money, and it's pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating, dude. I'll send you the link to her article. Her name is Maddie something, but what she ended up finding was that so a lot of the money that was given to so first, an NGO is nothing more than some kind of organization that fills the gap of something that the government can't provide, right? So during this whole border crisis thing of the massive influx of immigration, but also the massive influx of unaccompanied minors, there was nothing set in place to help house them. Not even house them, just to get them kind of ready and prepared, and then try and find out how to take care of them. And so the NGOs taking the spot of something that the government doesn't have. And so if the government created something, we wouldn't have the NGOs to do what they do. The government has nothing in place for that. So they started to hire or fund NGOs so they can create the housing situations and also kind of set up the safety perimeters, how they manage these unaccompanied minors, and then how they get them into some kind of, what's it called, foster care. Mm-hmm. And so when they allotted all this money to these NGOs, for some reason they lost oversight. And so when they lost oversight, they started to see a lot of issues. And that's
the government losing oversight, that would never happen, Rocco. Come on.
And so in her investigation showing the money, it was crazy to see the top 4 or 5 that were getting millions, if not close to billions. One of them was billions.
Billions.
Yes. Billions to help this housing of unaccompanied minors and also the safety of the unaccompanied minors. They started to notice that there was such a massive influx that they were losing control of it. And at some point, they stopped doing the deeper background investigations of the people that they were giving the kids to. And it started to get a lot of issues where exploitation of some of these kids in some of these housing facilities and issues like that were starting to pop up. So much so that right now, I believe there's a case that just happened that's highlighting these NGOs for what they're doing. But some of the CEOs of these NGOs were making upwards of like $400 to $700K a year.
That almost seems low. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, one of the top ones, I think it was 1.5 million is what he got. But yeah, the CEOs of these organizations who have crazy scrutiny on them right now, but as they should, their lack of oversight on protecting these kids, and actually the lack of oversight on who they were giving the kids to. There was a couple instances where they identified essentially our tax-paying dollars were going to these NGOs based on the areas of, that we needed to kind of fulfill in protecting these unaccompanied minors, was going directly back into human. Because the people that they were identifying, some of the cases that they were giving the kids to, were frequent flyers and identified as connections to the cartel.
Whoa.
Yeah,
so,
man.
So what's the chain of custody there? The kids come across the border. Somehow it's instead of given to ICE, they're given to an NGO.
Yeah, well,
to temporarily
ICE will
house
either
them.
hand them off to the NGO because those NGOs were said to have created the facilities to house them. And then from housing them to who they were going to give them to after, in the sense of, what do they call it? What is it? It's
chain of custody?
Yeah. No, but when they... I forget the word of it, whatever it is, but yeah, they're putting them into these houses, right? And so, what the I don't know how my mind went blank on that. But either way, so the chain of custody of it is they were usually doing a background investigation on the individuals who were going to be holding them, right? Who were going to be, Jesus, can't even think. What is it called when one of these kids goes into these housing situations? I just said it and I can't.
Temporary something?
Don't
Don't worry about it. People get the point.
Either way. Yeah, so there was supposed to be a deep background check on these people, and it got so overwhelmed that they stopped doing the background checks, and they started to identify. Once they did that, they realized that these houses that were housing them, right, identified that some of them had nefarious causes or had backgrounds and ties into the cartel, and so the cartel identified that there was a hole in the system, essentially, and was able to put people in place to secure these kids.
What blows my mind is that because in this chain of custody we talked about earlier, border patrol to ICE to deportation or whatever, because of so many people claiming asylum and there being such a backup in the legal system, again, because so many people are coming across the border, we now have all these situations where you're even hearing about kids then who aren't being deported back, but they're just like escorted, maybe with someone from Homeland Security if they're lucky, to an airport and sent on a plane somewhere else in the country to, Uncle Rico and some other town.
Foster care. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And then it's not someone on the other end. It could be, it often is some sort of like trafficking organization.
Yeah, so like, the whole claim of like 300,000 missing kids. You have to assume, well, how and where and what did that, and it has to be part of this whole system that was already, the lack of oversight. And like these kids come missing from this, you give them to someone who's supposed to be holding accountable and fostering these kids, but then, they lose oversight of that, and then they find out that some of these people that they were supposed to be doing background investigations don't have them. Well, that's where you start finding the holes in the system, and that. They're still receiving these billions for this. It's a really weird system. You got to see that article. She really digs into the 4 top ones that received so much money, and there was more, but she just wanted to highlight the 4 top ones.
Isn't one of them like a Catholic organization or something?
Yes, they all start as most of them start as some kind of Christian Catholic organization, and then they kind of go into this kind of space of supporting this issue. And when money gets involved, it kind of gets sloppy.
It's also, sometimes it just feels like a giant diversion machine to me, in the sense that when you have an issue like this, you are going to divide society, and you're going to also turn society in on its worst impulses. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, people are coming from Mexico. Well, then, the people who are from Latin America or whatever. And it turns into like a race thing as well. And you look across Europe where they've had a lot of open border issues in recent years. So now suddenly that's turning in on itself. Like, does it ever feel to you like it's some sort of social experiment, just that we're at the expense of?
I don't know. I mean, it's all, my biggest fear is that we're losing, it's like this part of my background in the military was psychological operations, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, and so it feels like there's a part of all of this, if I want to get into the deep, like, man, what is happening? Like, because it's hard to understand why this is all going down and who would let this happen. But part of me feels like a big plan of slowly dismantling, the American culture.
On the part of who?
I don't know. Maybe China, right? There's some intel that says China. China's long game. Things like TikTok, things like social media, things like, multiple different things, but dismantling kind of, the American ideology, the American culture, and slowly the massive influx of immigration could easily start to cause that, right? You see a lot of little factions and people not wanting to assimilate fully to American culture. You see that the Hispanic culture does this to itself a little bit more. You're either, I said in the book, like, you're either Mexican, you're too Mexican or not Mexican enough. Yeah. You know what I mean? So a lot of the, Hispanic countries who, there's a lot of internal turmoil between each other, a lot of competitive nature. You see it on, micro scale, but like even in the acting world, Hispanics don't tend to work well together in the sense of, I don't see a lot of guys trying to help each other. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be like, hey man, I need some help. And it's like, hey, cool story, bro.
Should take my role, mate.
Yeah. Well, it's the competitive space of it, but it's also the scarcity of it. They believe that, I could be taking their role. But, you see it in that sense, but in a big scale, you have a lot of people. When the show came out, one of the biggest Hispanic shows ever, and we got talked on by like, oh, this guy doesn't speak good Spanish, or this guy, he's not even Mexican, or this guy, he's, all this weird semantics of the bullshit that they just wanted to fight on. It's no different than like the struggles and difficulties of how people assimilate to American culture. And the fear of like assimilating too much, you're whitewashed and you're considered a coconut, and so when you have a lot of pockets of that, You have some people. It's what you see now of like now we have two national anthems. You know what I mean? You have the national anthem, but then when you have too much of that and it continues to kind of dilute what the foundation is, then you kind of lose the culture of this. And
yeah, it seems like we had such a nice middle ground forever. Before all this, where we talked about Ellis Island earlier. Yeah. People came in. That's the reason we got great Italian restaurants everywhere because Italians kept that part of culture, but like. Became a part of America too. You know what I mean? Maybe the first generation who's 40 years old when they come here, they speak with broken English the rest of their life. They talk like this, but the next generation is talking like this. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing about this country. And now we're in this cycle that you're talking about, where it becomes multi-generational, where they're like, no, we're gonna just stick with
say
ourselves.
It's a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing. Now it's actually it's frowned upon, if you're too Americanized, because then you're considered to be too white, and it's like, but that's not how it's turned racial. I don't know. Well, that's the problem. It's like too many extreme ideologies have hijacked some of our, the American culture and turned it into, an enemy, right? So like when people see the American flag, there's some people that see that as racist, and you're like, what? And then, you know what I mean? When you see that, when people start hijacking the flag and what the flag represents, right? That's dangerous. That's dangerous because the flag should also represent your struggle. Yeah, it represents everybody and all their struggle and all their hardships. And the fact that you can represent that flag and say, because of this flag, I can fight against it too. And that's the power of what the American flag should represent.
I couldn't agree with you more. And when you look at the recent political history of this is one I think about all the time, because it's like when Trump was coming up, just like everyone else, he's allowed to love the flag too, right? Yeah. And he loved it. You remember the picture of him like hugging the flags and stuff. Every press conference he did, there's like 100 million American flags behind him. And somewhere along the way, passively, it's like the left decided to give him the flag. When I see someone's bio on social media and there's American flag in the bio, I know how they vote. Yeah. That was not that way 8 years ago.
It shouldn't be.
It's crazy.
It shouldn't be. Yeah, well, because being on set in Hollywood, if you wore an American flag shirt, some people would be offended by it.
That's so.
It should not do that, but people allowed jargon, people allowed the media, people allowed all these people to hijack the foundation of what it should stand for.
Yes.
It should stand for oppression as well. It should stand for freedom. It should stand for all those things. And because of that flag, you can fight for what you believe in. That's what it should represent. But it turned into, now people see that as conservative. And you're like, well, that's not fair because it's not conservative. It's American. You know what I mean? Yes. And I think, if you're very liberal and you feel like you're oppressed for some reason, well, then you should fly that flag even higher. And you should carry that flag in a way like, but I can't fight for it because of this flag. You know what I mean? And that's what it should be. It should be the flag that fights for you, because it always has. And that's where it's unfortunate because it's turned into this weapon. It's weaponized now, and when you have this massive influx of immigration, now you have people really questioning like, fuck, I'm scared to say anything because if I say something, I'm going to, I'm either racist or this. Like, that's me writing this book. Bro, I thought like the Hispanic culture would be like, dope book, bro. You wrote a really good book that really explained this very, very intricate, complex thing. And no, the Hispanic culture fucking attacked the
really?
Bro, death threats, dog.
Why?
Death threats. Because one, they wouldn't even read it, right? They wouldn't read it because a Mexican man who was in the Border Patrol is
60-70%.
Yeah, exactly. The Mexican guy who serves in the Border Patrol is the colonizer, is what they would call him. Oh, I got all of them. I got the colonizer.
Rocco, you look like a colonizer, my friend.
I'm Uncle Juan. Which I didn't know that was a thing, but it's like an Uncle Tom, I guess. I got coconut.
I kind of like that one. I'm not gonna lie. That's good.
I got coconut. I got whitewashed. I got all these things, and you know why? So there's a really big, Latino social media page called Me Too, right? In Spanish, Me Too, right? And that's like they have all kinds of like pro-Latin American stuff. It's really cool stuff. They said, hey, I'd love to write an article about your book. And I was like, here we go. They're going to dust me, dog. I knew it right away. So I wrote the best version of what I would like my answers, and knowing like I'm gonna get shit on. And they posted it on their social media, and I'm talking thousands of comments of people talking shit. And then they finding me and saying, you're a traitor, all these things, right? And these are Americans, right? This discussion wasn't in Spanish, dog. It was in English, right?
Yeah.
So like 99% of these motherfuckers live in America hating on the fact that I serve the country and in the capacity of a border patrol because, what we said earlier, because the weaponization of the border patrol during the Trump era, and not because of Trump, but because of the media. And then fast forward to the Biden era. Now, like the counter of the argument, but still the border patrol being weaponized as the bad guy. Now that I'm Hispanic and served in the border patrol, I'm the bad guy. Now, if you talk to first generation Mexicans who know the border patrol and their kids become border patrol agents, it's because like, yes, mijo, serve the border patrol. It's a good organization, but also make sure that you're taking care of our people in the right sense of like, if they're coming across, don't abuse them. Which we don't, but like that's part of the idea is like, go ahead, do a good job, serve this country. This country's done us good. You know what I mean? And so it's a really interesting thing is that it's not the first generation Mexicans or Hispanics that are mad at the Border Patrol. It's like the second and third generations who are so far removed from it, they really don't have an understanding of it. And their lack of education of the subject makes them more angry because they don't understand it. You know what I mean? It's like people who don't understand guns, they're scared of guns.
Yes.
Very similar, right? Someone who like raised around guns, I'm like, I'm not afraid of them, so I'm not really scared of them. It's the same conversation. It's that second, third generation who wants to make a stance on something but really doesn't get it. But the first generations are usually like, man, I came here and I've been given the opportunity to work. I've been given an opportunity. I serve this country. I love the country. Like it's turned into like
They lived it.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. It's the third generation that usually is so far removed from the reality of like what the country's done for their own family and the opportunities that it's presented to them. And the argument they use is like, well, this country was taken on stolen land and all the oppression. And it's like,
What country was it?
yeah. We can get into that, but I mean, we can't change the past by any means. All we can do is focus on what we have right now. And what we have right now is the chance that if we continue to go this route, if the country continues to allow a massive influx of immigration, if they continue to allow this to a point where we don't even have the resources, you see what's happening in the hotels. You see what's happening to these states that have welcomed them in, and then now they're like, now they're in a state of emergency, right? You've seen the possibility of what happens in the future with the accountability or the lack of accountability of who comes into this country. There's a chance that we're slowly dismantling the culture of America and we lose this country. It's a different kind of war. You know what I'm saying? It's a smarter version of war. And I mean, who's funding all these motherfuckers that come from way down there here? Those are the questions we should be asking.
And you think a lot of that could go back to China?
Yeah, I think China and some of the Al Qaeda, some of the extreme terrorist groups.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think about the idea all the time of like democracy being used against itself by outer interests. It's like in this country, let's juxtapose us and like the CCP. Yeah. In this country, we can say what we want about any politician or whatever, and the great thing is we have free speech, so we don't go to prison when we do that, as long as you don't make like a death threat or something like that. In the CCP, it's off with your head when you do that. In the CCP, they can have a lot of innovation too in their companies, but they get to own their companies, so they get to tell them what to do and they get to handle all those things. Yeah. Over here, that's not quite the case. There's obviously some weird relationships between corporations and the government, but at a high level, corporations are thinking for their bottom line and governments are thinking for their bottom line, and it's just this constant battle, which means that corporations from China who are working on behalf of the Chinese government by choice, or by force, can therefore come in and fund things here that spell profit for someone in our private markets that then use the rules of the fact that we allow that in America, so because it's supposed to be freedom, right? To use our freedom against itself to turn it in on itself. And you're looking at a situation now where yes, we've had wars over the past 80 years. Yeah. Christ, there's wars all the time. We haven't had a war that really hits us at home across the mass population since the draft of Vietnam, I'd say. Yeah. A lot of people like to go World War II. I'll go even shorter, and I'll say Vietnam. And so when you combine that with the fact that we also have not been invaded.
Yeah.
All these other countries deal, I mean, you've seen it, they deal with borders. Someone
Yeah.
walks right across the border and does something. Our borders, it's a different kind of invasion. It's not like a military invasion in that way at this point. You know, we are so complacent as a society in this time of peace that you talk about, you know, the second and third generations of, say, immigrants.
Yeah.
Think about the third and fourth generations and fifth generations of even Americans on top of that,
Yeah.
who have known nothing but peace and, you know, buying their iPhone and going out on Friday nights and whatever.
They're the other ones. Yeah.
It's no wonder why we're turning in on ourselves here and why it's so easy for other places to maybe fund that on itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think it's interesting that we have internally, you know, when I get to meet non-documented, you know, I don't even know how to say it, illegals, immigrants, it doesn't matter. If any kind of migrant you meet on the border who just came across, who's genuinely here like for the opportunity, right? Because they're running from persecution in their own country, they're running from destabilization, whatever it is, economic relief. They love America, dude.
Yeah.
You know, they love America and they love the opportunity for it. There's a few of them now that do come because they know they're going to gain a lot of opportunity, right? Because of some of the financial stuff that the perks that they're receiving, some of the illegal migrants, right? But for the most part, it's like, I'm coming here to work, right? And they're really happy, right? And it's crazy because you have Americans, like you said, fifth, sixth generations that hate America. And you're like, what is happening? Like internally, we're imploding in a way that's just hard to understand. Like some of our high-level colleges are teaching that, right? A lot of our high-level colleges are not showing like the love of America, but almost the disdain of America. Harvard, something that's proven. Like,
Yeah.
Just read half the books these kids are coming out with that they wrote, and you're like, you know, like there's no love lost on this. You know what I mean? And it's a confusing time, man. It's a confusing time. Like obviously I raised my kids to understand America and love what we have, the opportunities, and not to ignore some of the America's done too, right?
Yeah.
You know, we've
Yeah.
destabilized countries. you know?
Absolutely.
And
Thrown
what-
over a government or 10,
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. You know, and we've caused a lot of our own that's happening right
Yes.
now. Absolutely. And I say we, these are the higher power. It's not us, dog.
That's
It's
right.
it's the governments who are making these choices for us that we didn't even know, we didn't vouch for, we didn't support. But yeah, I could take that on the chin all day. Okay. But that doesn't mean like we turn our backs on what we have.
That's right.
We can't turn our backs on the freedoms that we do have. It's very, very fortunate to live in this time, but as well, it's a scary time to see that we could possibly be destabilizing what we have.
Yeah, it's like my friend Eric Zuliger, who's on this podcast back in episodes 163 and 164, he had a great line. He said, people are not their governments.
Yeah.
And we equate the two universally everywhere now. And, you know, you should be able to love everything great that America stands for from a leadership position, which we still are. We still lead the free world and still have the most opportunities here. We still have the American dream and all that. And let's hope we keep that going, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to say all that while also saying, as the top dog in that way, we want to strive to be even better. So let's point out the things where we got some fucked up
Yeah.
and let's fix it. The fact that you can only have one or the other, according to some of these people, you know, who you're talking about, is ridiculous to me because it's anti-American too, because it makes no sense when in fact a lot of the people who are saying these things are only allowed to say it because they live here. It's like go, you know what? I'll tell you what. Trans lives for Palestine. Go to Palestine.
No,
Go to Gaza. See what happens.
I had an interview with someone on Borderland, and the goal of the conversation was to talk about deported veterans, right? Something we can talk about right now. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, please.
Yeah, but
This is a new one.
I was trying to talk to this kid about his story and why he supports deported veterans. And for some reason, he just went off on this freaking tyrant that, like, America this. And I was like, whoa. I can't allow you to sit here and just talk on America, bro, because this is my show. You know what I mean? And,
Turn the mic volume
right,
down.
right. And I was just like, hold the up, right? And it's funny because I was thinking my producer's going to hate me, but I don't give a I don't like it. I don't like anyone going on to the show and jumping on a false narrative and claiming it's truth. And it's like, no, that's not true, right? And then eventually I said, well, why do you even live here? He goes, and I was like, well, tell me a better place to live. And he said some country. I said, well, then
Sweden.
Go. I said, well, then go. Well, then go. Nothing stops you from living here.
Yeah.
But you sit here and complain, and that's not the answer either, right? In the military, they say, if you're going to come up with a problem, you better bring a solution behind that motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? And when they're just angry, emotionally ranting without any kind of trying to fix this, it's worthless to me. Like, don't come onto my show and give me bull. I want experts to talk about the expertise. Now, he was supposed to be an expert on deported veterans. Let me tell you about that motherfucker.
This is a little bit of a shock.
Here's what happened. Right now, we have over 400 veterans who are deported. How did that happen? Well,
like American veterans.
No. They were supposed to get their American citizenship after serving the country.
Oh, no.
And then they find themselves getting in trouble in some capacity. Some are like, holy, that's a fucked up thing. And some are not so fucked up. It could be a drug issue. Could be DUI with, involuntary manslaughter. Whatever the fuck it is. Here's how it works. You can't serve our military unless you have a green card, right? Once you get a green card, a permanent resident card, well, then now you can join the military. When you join the military, it's usually on the fact of like, hey, I want to join the military so I can gain my citizenship faster. This is how I prove my loyalties to your country or to my country, right? In the process of doing it, some bases, Fort Sill, for instance, during my time as a drill sergeant there, we had 4 of my soldiers get their citizenship, naturalization, after graduating basic training. Boom. Not all bases do the same thing. Not all bases follow that protocol. This is just Fort Sill. Fort Benning, Fort Jackson, Fort whatever, Leavenworth, all those can do it different. Some of them say, hey, go to your station, you'll do it when you get to your unit. Well, early in the war, they'd get to their unit and then they'd be forward deployed. So they'd go to Iraq or Afghanistan before they could get their naturalization. Right? So then they go to Iraq or Afghanistan, and now it's busy. Some of these deployments were a year long. Some were even longer, right? Then they come back from deployment. For some reason, they never got their naturalization paper done, right? It wasn't of importance to their chain of command. Now, there's different stories. There's plenty of guys who got their naturalization, right? We're talking about the ones who, for some reason, were deployed. The unit didn't take it serious or didn't focus on it. The combat was more important. Whatever the case, they come back. They still don't get it done. After their 3 years of service, they still haven't got their naturalization papers done. They get out of the service. They get in trouble. It could be from post-traumatic stress. It could be from drinking issues. Whatever it is, boom, now they find themselves deported.
Whoa.
And so we have over 400 American combat veterans or veterans, some of them not combat because some later on have not gone to combat because of the time, get deported because they served the country. They were promised to gain naturalization. They just, for some reason, their unit or themselves didn't make it a priority at the time. They get out, they get in trouble, and boom, now they're sent back to a different country. And it frustrated me hearing this for the first time because I'm like, hold the f up. Personally, if you serve our country, give them their naturalization because they've proven to them, they've proven to our country that they earned that. And if they f up, well, then let them do that in the American system, not back at their own country. Let them still reap the benefits of like serving as an American and even doing their time as an American. That's what I want to see. And so I'm helping some organizations fight this and exploit this and tell people the truth about that it's a really weird loophole that happened. We're trying to get something in Congress where the fact that as soon as you serve after your basic training, they automatically get their naturalization. Now there's controversy on that. Shouldn't they serve 2 years first? Whatever the case, I don't care what it is. For me, they should not be allowed out of the military until we know we got their citizenship because they've earned it.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happening right now in our society currently.
It's crazy how many second order and third order effects there are.
Yeah.
Related to the border and immigration.
Dude, I tell people this is just a branch of the tree of immigration. There's so many levels to this, dude. So many levels to it. It's crazy. So there's an author who wrote a book called The Undocumented American. Her name is Carla something. She was an illegal immigrant who came across with her dad, or her parents left first. They came out here to work, to earn money. The grandma sent her to meet with a family. She was still undocumented. Somehow, through relationships, she was able to get into Harvard. She graduates Harvard as an undocumented. Then she gets into Yale, bro. She writes this book that did nothing other than talk on American culture and how the whole time she was scared about being deported. And I'm like, bro, she won awards for this book. And I was like, so our young Latinos who are looking for these heroes to look up to, these academics to read their story, and then Harvard, Yale, yeah, I'll read it. And it's nothing but talk about America.
She went to Harvard and Yale.
Free. Someone paid and sponsored her because, her situation, whatever it was.
What is that? I
can't
relate
it's
to that.
None of my business, dog. I know my kids ain't going to Harvard or Yale, dog. I can't afford it, and there's no way there. Dude, my daughter's brilliant, homie. Brilliant girl, and she didn't get into Harvard. I'll tell you that. And this girl's a straight A student since she started school. Whatever. But my frustration.
She was born in the wrong country.
Bro, my frustration is not that an undocumented, right? Not that a non-citizen received a Harvard degree. Fine. My frustration was in the book she wrote that gained all kinds of attention because of her status was nothing more and showed no gratitude to the country that afforded her that opportunity. That 99% of our kids will never be given that opportunity. Never, bro. And then she got her PhD from Yale. And my frustration was the book did nothing but talking about whitewashing, and
it's the best.
And it frustrated me as an Hispanic man, saying like, "Damn, if my daughter got that and she wrote a book, I would have said you better show gratitude, man, because you've been given a opportunity that none of us got." And for my daughter to ever get an opportunity like that would be like, man, you just generationally changed your family from here on out, and that's a gorgeous statement. You know what I mean? My mother picked fruit, dog. My mother picked fruit. That's how far I come from. My mother picked fruit for money. I was able to put my family in a position where I was an actor on television. That's a big generational, social position. That's a jump.
It's an American story right there.
Exactly. And my daughter graduated from freaking, she's a Buckeye, Ohio State, and she's going to law school next year.
Oh, congrats.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a big... Only in America, motherfucker.
Only in America.
Only in America. And that's like something that like I wish more would show the gratitude, because she couldn't have done it from where her family was from. She couldn't have had the opportunity, and she was given the opportunity. And at some point, I just ask, part of that assimilation is at least showing gratitude for a country that's given the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, man. I think what you're doing too, you're not just a guy who served the country in the military. You then went and did it in a way that I guess goes very underappreciated, serving in Border Patrol for a long time. But, for a moment, skipping over your Hollywood career and look at where you are now versus where you were in between or back when you were with the Border Patrol, it's like now you're using the platform that you've built for yourself to educate people on this through your book, through your show, through doing sit-downs with guys like me and putting it out there on the internet. And I think it comes across to me really heavily just talking with you that, like, you only saw what you saw in Border Patrol, so you're getting educated as well with all the latest stuff that you're not that you're just learning about. Again, I'm trying to watch what I say here because I know you got that one thing, but like that you're now witnessing that maybe wasn't around when you were there. And then through your show, you're bringing in all the people who work on each one of these individual topics. And it's a huge public service, I think, because it gives people both worlds. It gives them the world of someone like you is sitting there learning about some of this just like them, but also someone like you understands like how that's approached from the other side because you've been on it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like being able to interview guys like Ed Calderon, someone who I've followed for years, someone who
he's awesome.
I look for his information because his intel is valuable, right? And then to hear what's going on in his head now, some of the intel that he has, that's stuff that I'm not privy to because I don't go into Mexico, homeboy. That's not my space. Because of currently what I do for a living, I don't touch any of that. I stay on this side of the border. I study, I learn, I journalize on what's happening on this side of the border, specifically with the Border Patrol career field in Homeland Security. That's the world that I'm considered to be more of an expert in. But when I get to interview someone who's like, tell me about the cartels. What are they doing now? Damn, it's crazy to hear, El Mayo just got picked up, right? That's from the Sinaloa cartel. And then knowing that the CJNG, right? The new generation cartel, the big up and comers, right? Everyone's nervous about that. Well, to hear that Ed Calderon was like, hey, bro, that's someone to look out for. Okay, well, now I need to do even more investigative work. I need to see why someone like him would say that. And that's a concern. That's something that we as Americans should pay attention to. Because what happens is the Sinaloa cartel was able to kind of keep tabs on what's going on the borders. They kind of kept control, right? They're the big dog that said, nope, that can't happen, that happened. It's just like, for example, do you remember the group that went down to Mexico and got shot up? And they said they were going there just for, they said they were going there for like some surgery, right? Some like plastic surgery. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and they got shot up, right?
Yes.
And did you see what happened just shortly after, like a day later, like 6 dudes were on the floor, like these are the guys in charge? That's the kind of shit the Sinaloa cartel does, like fix that and say sorry, essentially, right? That's
Apologize.
Right, that's exactly what that is. That's a way of keeping tabs of like, hey, America, my bad. That shouldn't have happened under our watch.
Please let our smuggling go on.
And even if it was them who did it, it was still a sign of like, hey, in good faith, here's... I'm being straight up, right? As weird as that sounds, that's what, in good faith, here's the 6, right? That is the kind of shit the Sinaloa cartel could do.
Yeah.
The CJNG doesn't really give a right? And so without the Sinaloa cartel at the helm, down at the borders.
The devil you don't know.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So what's about to happen now is going to be a very interesting story. I don't know. So I got my connections to these investigative journalists to be like, tell me, bro, tell me. So then I know how to handle my side of it. My connections here in Texas, my connections here on the border. How can I help my friends understand and be better prepared for the what happens? You know, recently I got in contact with the dude who trained the Los Zetas.
Oh,
them, right?
Yeah.
The Los Zetas were big, right? They started out as being kind of the security for the Sinaloa cartel, and eventually they started their own little clique. Well, then you're like, wait, how'd they get power? Like the whole conversation goes like, oh yeah, well, special forces was the ones who trained him. And I'm like, well, that's my world. I started contacting people. Boom, I got a hold of the dude. So right now I'm working on a story only so we can better understand the TTPs and the training that they were taught. So we can better understand what skill sets they have and where have they gotten better from then. That's what we're working on.
So it's a not parallel, but like a similar type of thing to like we armed the Mujahideen in the 80s and then later they came back and used it against us.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And my goal is just to better understand like how good are they? Because for a long time we were very nervous with the Los Zetas, but I'm like, well, yeah, but what were they taught? Because I'm not really worried if they're just taught old school Vietnam tactics. Blah. But if you're taught how to enter clear rooms, how to make explosive devices, blah, well, then we should be concerned. In the world of in the tactical space, we should always know what our enemies are capable of doing, right? That's what we do.
Yes.
And so me, as investigative journalist who also has a background in tactics, right? Like, let me know where their foundation is so I know where they probably are at now. And then also let me get further into that so we can really kind of understand like, okay, I know exactly how to handle these dudes in the event that we ever have to do it. You know, like they're not the biggest of concerns now, but they were at one point. But what do they know and where are they at now? It's my biggest concern. Is like, how dope are these guys at clearing rooms? You know what I mean? That's where I'm at right now. Is like, how good tactically are they in the event that they ever potentially bring that to us? We should know that.
Well, I do struggle with all the time. Like, obviously, cartels bad, leadership bad. No one's arguing that. But you know, you wonder about taking the El Chapos and the El Mayos out. And to, I guess, Ed's point, I'd love to get Ed in here. He's incredible. I've watched him for years. But, like, you know, if you have something below that is even more unhinged, right? It's like, is there another way to go about this from a law enforcement standpoint where I hate to say it like this, but you leave individuals like that in charge, but you kind of cut off some knees here and there below? I think that's what we did for a long time with the Sinaloa cartel. Genuinely, I believe we did that for a long time. We you know, there's, you know, go check out that podcast, those who are listening, with Ed Calderon. And then we did another podcast with another individual. Either way, Ed Calderon. Can we put that link in the description, Alessi? Yeah, Ed Calderon spoke about how El Mayo there's a potential that he believes, based on his experience, that El Mayo had connection to the CIA. Yes. Yeah. And so if that's the case, well, then all we're doing is saying, okay, cool. Just keep tabs on everything for now. He even talked about during 9/11, somehow there was connection to our government and the cartels to say, hey, don't let anyone cross right now. We're really doing some shit. You know what I mean? Like, wait, what? What? That's crazy. Well, go listen to that podcast, and it really kind of opens your eyes to like, holy shit, who's actually in control here? All right. You know what I mean? It's this really weird thing. So
that's what the big concern is. Now El Mayo's out of the picture. Is that a version of him retiring and saying, hey, it's time to head out?
It's a hell of a retirement behind bars in the U.S.
Oh, yeah. It's better than what it could have been.
I guess.
You know what I'm saying? His sons are already in freaking, protective custody.
Yeah.
In the sense of they're probably hiding out here in Dallas somewhere where who knows?
Yeah.
So it's that or the other, right? If the CJNG was getting close to them and he was just like nervous, like, dude, they're going off the hinges. Well, that's a really scary time for him, I guess. So let him just kind of go out and, I'm good. I'm done. So that's where the concern starts to lie. And if everyone I'm interviewing right now is concerned with them, I think we all should be concerned with them.
Yeah.
That's the one that I think everyone should start paying attention to in the cartel world.
Now, you left the Border Patrol in 2015. Mm-hmm. And you write about it in your book, but it's not for any reason anyone would ever guess. You were essentially involved with the Sweat and Matt. Oh, what was his last name? The prisoners from Dannemora who escaped.
Yeah.
Matt Reed or something like that.
No, it's what is it? Matt's and Sweat. That's who.
It was. Richard, Matt, and David Sweat.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So if people remember this story, these guys in 2015, Sweat was serving life without parole. Matt was 25 to life. They were murderers. They escaped from Dannemora prison by exploiting one of the guards who got them tools or something. They dug this hole. It was like straight up like Shawshank Redemption. And so they were on the run for I think it was almost a week or something like that.
I think it was longer than that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, totally escaped. And you guys were called in.
Yeah, so when I got to SOG, because I was a single father of 4 kids, right? We were trying to figure out our schedule and how I was going to work it. So during that time, I became a training officer, and I helped kind of rewrite the BORSTAR selection. And what I did was add the tactical medicine to be more prevalent in the selection because I thought it was important to implement that early. And so as I was doing that, I became friends with the team leader of a BORTAC team because he's a former Ranger. His name is Chris Voss. Well known, documented that he was part of the
Not the Chris Voss who wrote the book. Different Chris Voss.
Wrote what book?
Never Split the Difference.
No. Yeah, not that
guy.
Chris Voss. Yeah, not that Chris Voss.
When I was reading it, I was like, okay, it's a different Chris Voss.
Yeah, this is the Border Patrol stud Chris Voss, who, like I said, he was a part of the mission. He's a big name in the
real Chris Voss.
The real Chris Voss. I'm talking the machine, right? But me and him became good friends. He's a former Army Ranger, and I said, man, if I ever came back to the teams, I'd do it to work with you because I just trust him. I think he's just that good of an operator. And he said, well, let me know. Did 3 years teaching, 3 sessions, three iterations with BORSTAR class 23, 24, and 25, and then I was kind of ready. And so I said, I'm ready to jump ship to attach to you guys. So they welcomed me. They brought me on attached to BORTAC as their medic. And from there it was, train with them for a little while, and then, we were ready to go for any kind of big operation. We did a couple of training cycles, we did a couple of ops, but then, at the time in my life, I was going through a second divorce, kind of. I was kind of going through my trying to figure out my life with my kids. I was able to kind of do the mission because I had another wife helping me, my second wife, and I just kind of realized I wasn't there a lot. So I was kind of going through this phase of my life of maybe I should hang it up. It's time to stop doing the operator life and actually be a better dad. And I prepared a big party for my daughter, who at the time, I don't know, she was turning 8 or 9 at the time. I've missed most of her birthdays because of operations, whether it be in missions overseas or whether it be with the Border Patrol. And I kind of set up a really big luau party for her, and I was kind of expecting that I was going to be home. We just got done from a really big training cycle. We were in Quantico, we were here, we were there, we were doing all kinds of stuff. And so as far as I knew, we weren't doing any missions for the next 2 weeks, but we are an operational team that at any point, if someone calls, we go. And so as I was kind of home relaxing, I got a call from my supervisor and says, hey man, we got the mission. We already saw these dudes escape. We saw it happening, and we're like, I wonder if they're going to call us. But after 4 days, I'm like, there's no way they're calling us because they've already all the sign, meaning, they've already, all the tracking capabilities that we have would be a lot harder after 4 days, after 5 days.
And that's why they would call you, though, because you guys are expert trackers.
Yeah, the Border Patrol, that's what they do, right? And on that team, we have scent dogs and we have bite dogs. And so we can track down pretty well,
Wow.
There's no other team in the nation that was as capable as we were for that specific mission. The FBI has their specific mission they're really good at. All the local tactical teams don't really do search and rescue or search missions like we do. Our job, everyone on the BORTAC team and the BORSTAR team, we're Border Patrol agents, man. So a bigger part of their career was tracking people down. So everyone has that foundation already. On top of that, they know how to move tactical and they have the right dogs for the kind of job. And so by the time we got the call, I packed up all my stuff and I was like, I'm out, And so we took off. And we knew it was going to be tough because of how many days already gone. And so we were already kind of given directions like, hey, this area, we can go start tracking, start looking. It was impossible though, man. Once we landed and we got to the operations center, man, there was...
This is up in New York, right?
Yeah, up in New York. Yeah, this is, I forget the area of New York, but yeah. Upstate New York is what they call it, right?
Not that New York.
Yeah, not that New York. I'm talking green. Dog, I'd never seen anything like it. I was like, this is crazy.
Place beyond the pines, New York.
I didn't know New York looked like that, to be honest. We had to take a ferry at one point to get to where we were going. Yeah, and so the whole thing was different for me. We get there, and dude, I just look on the ground just as we get off the truck, and I'm like, holy shit. Look how many boots are on the floor. Like, there were so many different organizations, law enforcement agencies. I mean, you name it, they were there. And I just look on the floor to be like, holy shit, if this was what's going on out there, we're going to have trouble. But we started running off, since we were there so late, we started running off intel. And immediately we got some intel that there was an island. Someone thought they saw something there. No one's supposed to be there at this time. Boom. So we had a boat op. We took 2 boats for our teams. We got to the island. Boom. We cleared the island. It looked like they might have been there. It's hard to tell. It could have been anyone, but it looked like there was definitely a sign of someone there, a disturbance. Nothing there. Boom. Next day we have another mission to an abandoned school. So we took 2 helicopters to that point. I don't know the name of the helicopter. They were like Marine helicopters or Navy, but very similar to like a Black Hawk kind of thing. So we have pictures of us on that bird that is kind of famous for that mission. And I have my feet outside of the bird just on my way, you know what I mean? And we get there. It was a challenge to clear that one because it was half abandoned, half fallen. And so we had to clear up, then down, and it was just kind of a really weird space. But if they were there, man, that would have been a tough one. But it did look like there was some like old food kind of cooked there. Right. So again, we were close. Yeah, could have been them. We were close. Then we had a few more missions just like that. Just we get a call, we go out there, we check it, we track, we look. Nothing. This is about 6 days now. And we're like, shit, we're probably going to be cold on the trail now. It's so many days. We're just going to have to wait for really good intel. We were about to redeploy. Like I said, so many law enforcement there already. We didn't need necessarily to be there if we didn't have really good means of trying to track someone. So we were just kind of helping as much as we could.
Did you guys, but it sounds like you guys you were getting intel, but you have your own jurisdiction to take action. You're not like reporting to the local PD or anything.
No, not at all. If we see them, we act, and we were gonna, whatever you do at that point. If they have a gun on them, then if they're a threat, then you take them out. If they don't, then you arrest them. So that's just kind of how we would have handled the whole situation. And so as we were going to redeploy back home, we have another day. I just told my supervisor, hey, do you mind if I go home? My daughter's birthday is tomorrow. I'd love to catch it. Something, he's like, yeah, go ahead. So as I'm on a flight, flying home, they get a call, new intel. And boom. So as history goes, they end up finding one of them, and Voss took the shot. The individual raised a rifle right at him, and he engaged on him. And so
Matt did, and he was killed. Yeah.
Yep. And then Sweat was apprehended the next day. He was in an engagement with a law enforcement officer as well. So,
but this is what being home and off the end of that. This is what made you say it's time to hang it up.
Yeah, it was a hard pill to swallow. I try to explain that you give the teams 100% of your mind, body, spirit, soul, dude, and you give your family just what's left. And that's why there's a lot of divorce rates in these special operations units. That's why, you don't see these operators have the greatest of lifestyles, family lifestyles, because it's hard to find a woman who's willing to endure that kind of challenge.
Yes.
There's a few, and it's beautiful, man, when you see it, but it's not often.
A lot to ask.
Yeah. And so, I was at a space where my relationship wasn't going well, and I already knew it, and I knew I needed to kind of make a decision. And since I made the question of going back home for my daughter's birthday and I missed that event, I felt that they weren't going to get the best version of me because my mind was slightly shifting on trying to focus on the family. And it wasn't fair to them to have a medic that was kind of 1 foot in.
Right.
And so I resigned.
Well, you had put in a lot, including the military and everything. You just put in a lot of years of doing high level for a long time. And I think you earned the right to do that at that point. But I mean, looking back on it, it seems like you look back on with great fondness. The
Absolutely.
6 years you did that, you loved it.
Absolutely. I think the organization is incredible. I think when people get a chance to actually understand what they do, it's a value to this nation. It's extremely important for men and women like that to be serving this country in that capacity. I think it's second to the military and what they do. I think the military is important, but boots on ground on our own soil, there's nothing more important than what they're doing currently in their mission.
If you had a magic wand and you were put in control of our system, how would you, this is a loaded question,
I know.
So at a high level, how would you at least stem the tide of our current struggle with not just the border itself, but like the immigration system?
Yeah, I mean, you have to address this in two parts, and they both have to work together. And you have to address this in a homeland security perspective, and you have to address this in an immigration policy perspective. One, we have to first look at the original immigration policies that were put into place many years ago and see how we can fix that and how can we make it so it's a more fair system. Currently, right now, it takes about 10, 15 years for anyone to become an American citizen, doing it the legal way. And you're telling me anyone who does it the legal way takes that long, but someone who does it the illegal way can get into this country within 1 day. Correct. And then there's loopholes in that system as well, where they can have a child here with an American citizen, or they can get married to an American citizen. Within now, they can circumvent that system again, and now they can petition to be an American citizen, right? And they can fight to stay here because of that. So we'd have to find a way that we don't award anyone coming to this country illegally. We have to be harsher punishments for those who enter illegally. We have to have people that are seeking asylum do it the right way, and we have to have a better system on our asylum situation where they're not coming into the country for several years before they're even seen by an immigration judge. So more immigration judges to kind of streamline that situation. Somehow a more streamlined situation for those who are coming legally, right? And then we have to educate those who are being manipulated and extorted by transnational organizations who are smuggling them. We have to educate South America. We have to educate those to realize that there's a legal system, and the legal way is better and it's safer. And then there is the illegal system that will potentially put you into drug trade or be extorted. And I don't think a lot of the South American countries fully have a grasp of that knowledge. From what I've studied and learned by investigative journalists, in a lot of the other countries, they're deemed as almost travel agents who are just helping them get across. And so they're not demonized. They're not looked at in any kind of unfair ways. They're looked at as people that know how to transport people across border. And so if we explain, I think if we have a better way of explaining and educating that our system that is already hopefully streamlined, then we can show them that there's a fair, safe way that is affordable compared to the extortion, drugs, and trade that the cartel and transnational organizations have kind of created. I think, like I said, it's a multiple echelon attack that we have to kind of approach this. I think at the same time, we have to have better systems in place to identify every single person who comes to this country illegally and making sure that they're not here for nefarious reasons. During the years I was in with Obama, he kind of proved that when you have repercussions for entering illegally, it devastates the system and slows down anyone coming in, right? Because they see that I don't want to go to jail for 6 months. I don't want to go to jail for a year. So then it slows down the process of them coming into that. And it was proven because during my time, we did an operation called Operation Streamline. And Operation Streamline was a very particular area of the border that put people in jail no matter what. First time, second time, third time, they went to jail. And they went to jail for a significant amount of time. And then they were sent back and deported after. That slowed down the traffic where I promised maybe you would have 20 people in a week try and attempt to cross, which is phenomenal numbers compared to what you see, 200 people in a day at times.
Yeah.
So there was proven systems that work. What's happening is there's a lot of ideologies that are contradicting now that see the immigration process as racist. And it's not racist when you're protecting your country and you have rules of the land.
Yeah.
It's not racist to say, because this isn't like against one particular immigrant. This is all those who are trying to attempt to come into this country.
And we have a country that has every race represented.
Right.
Too,
so it's not a racist cause here.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want to view it in a racist capacity, which makes them emotional, which why they hate the whole system.
Right.
And it's wrong. We have to be able to protect our nation. We have to be able to identify who comes to this country illegally. We have to be able to have a system that is more streamlined for those who come into this country legally. And then we have to be able to somehow dismantle these organizations who are making money off exploiting innocent people, because that's one of the saddest things you'll ever see.
Do you have any faith that in the next, say, 5 years, where I'm not saying it gets fixed, but that we see a way better system
Yeah,
than we currently have?
I think so. I think, there's people that say like, oh, right now they're doing NTAs. That's never happened before in the Border Patrol. And that's not true, because many years ago when there was a massive influx of Brazilians coming into the country and they were having trouble housing them at that time, there was NTAs as well, right? There's no superiors. So they used to come across and be like, Senor, my papers, right? So this is definitely unprecedented, the numbers that we see, because the cartel has identified that they can make a lot of money off of it. But illegal immigration is not something new, right? This is common. I say it's been weaponized now by the cartels to make a lot of money off of, like I said. And so, yeah, we see it in a very particular way now than we ever have. I think it comes in waves. I think the challenges we see in this immigration stuff comes in waves. You might see the next administration, whoever it might be, they're probably going to do some kind of pardon for those who are here currently. You'll probably see something like that in the next few years, if not this administration, the next one, I believe. I don't know, but like that's not a left or right thing. It's kind of a way of identifying who is here already.
Right.
Something that, that was initiated before Reagan and Reagan implemented. I think you're going to see that again. Will that help? I think it'll only help us identify what cities are going to be in need of serious financial backing and support of the resources, right? I think that's really what it helps,
I mean, I could take you over there.
But this is a challenging thing, but I think it comes in waves. I think you'll see. I don't think you can ignore what's happening right now in our country in some of these sanctuary cities, and how unfortunate it is, and how overwhelmed they are, and how out of control they feel themselves.
I agree.
And I think you've already seen. At one point it was defund the police, and everyone's like, we need the police. Like, yeah, man, because you start to see the repercussions of what you thought might have been a good idea, and you might be doing some humanitarian decision, but in the end of the day, we're still a country that has to manage this in a way that's fair for us who are living here currently.
It's like I've always said, answer's not here. It's not here.
No,
it's here.
It's here.
And I wish on these pendulum swings we could find a way to stop the momentum right there. But we never do, and it just kind of comes as it comes. But there's a few more topics I want to get into with you. I want to talk about some of the drug tunnels underneath San Diego. I want to talk about some of the stuff I talked about with Jorge Ventura in California. But we're coming up on the end of this episode, so we're gonna do a short Patreon episode after this, so you can get the Patreon link in the description below. But we're gonna have the link to your book,
cool.
Borderland. We are also gonna have a link to your show, Borderlands, here on YouTube, which is phenomenal, people. So go check it out. And I want to make sure we direct link that Ed Calderon episode as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you were talking about that for a while. But Rocco, you're awesome. Your book's awesome. Your show's awesome. And I really appreciate you coming out here and doing this, brother.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, we'll do it again sometime.
Yep, absolutely.
Everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. Before you leave, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. It's a huge help. And also, if you're over on Instagram, be sure to follow the show at Julian Dorey Podcast, or also on my personal page at Julian D. Dorey. Both links are in the description below. Finally, if you'd like to catch up on our latest episodes, use the Julian Dorey Podcast playlist link in the description below. Thank you.